Chapter 1246 Sit showed Gustav placing a small circular item on his forehead the moment the ground around him got destroyed and he began falling. As the buildings descended and covered up his entire figure, or so they thought at the time, he had already vanished. He turned invisible, activated speed skills along with hover, and used his wings. He immediately became fast enough to escape the descending buildings and appeared behind Navira, who was still dropping the buildings in a frenzy. The power in the invisibility button depleted after she finished dropping the buildings, and Gustav just happened to wait patiently till she was done, so he could tell her she failed. He ended the battle in less than 5 minutes. It looked so easy for him. Crimson. The spectators were still immensely shocked watching Gustav approach the area where other participants were cooped up. A lot of them didn't think Navira would win from the start, but they hadn't expected Gustav to take care of her so easily. To Gustav, this battle had lasted longer than he wanted it to, but he was glad he didn't display much of his battle prowess, just like he wanted. "Yo man, that was cold," E voiced with a smile as he raised his hand for a high five. "Pa." Gustav returned the high five as he returned to the midst of his teammates. Ildris, Teamy, and the others as well also basked in joy at their first win. It was almost like the win had come to them with open arms, asking to be taken. A couple of participants shot Gustav a not-so-friendly glance from all across the place, but Gustav wasn't bothered. He knew he would still be challenged regardless of how things had gone down this time. He just didn't think he would have been challenged so early into the start. The second batch continued without a hitch as the spectators focused on other battles that were currently ongoing. The sound of battles continuously echoed across the vicinity as things turned even more intense in some locations. The place where Gustav had battled with Navira began slowly repairing itself. There was no doubt that it would be ready before the next batch began. "We just have to maintain our current accumulated number of points to be fine in the long run. I estimate the second disqualification will be in 2 days, and this time a higher number of planets won't make the cut," Gustav calculated as he took note of the ongoing battles on every single stage. Handler 1 had mentioned that the Versus Battle Challenge would go on for about a week, and during this time, there would be disqualifications. Gustav could already tell when the disqualification would first happen, and it was obvious that a specific amount of total points for a planet would be decided upon. The planets who fail to meet up with the required points will of course be disqualified. Gustav could tell there will be more getting disqualified this time, since the current challenge was practically a points-stealing challenge. There was no doubt that before this ended, some planets might not be left with any points. There was also the unspoken rule that should a planet lose all of their points, they were automatically disqualified. It would still take some time to get to this point since there were still over 1,800 planets left in the competition. As time went by, the third batch began, and still not a single Earth participant was picked amongst the 150. This time no one challenged a single Earthling, as well making Gustav wonder if he did too good in the last battle. He of course didn't want to completely scare participants off, since he still wanted them to gather some more points for themselves. He already had someone in mind that he was interested in challenging, but he wanted to make sure he gathered enough points so the person wouldn't be able to refuse his challenge. Right now he had the number 1,500 foot floating above his head, but it wasn't enough, so he was hoping more people would challenge him. "Am I the only one who thinks that dude powers are awfully similar to Falco's?" Teamy voiced from the side. "You're actually right. I'm noticing the similarities as well," Matilda added from the side. Following their gazes, there was no doubt that they were referring to the 7-foot figure wrapped up in black bandage-like outfit from head to toe while emitting an aura of darkness. His eyes were pitch black as well, and he just happened to be battling with an opponent with the dark claws that had formed on his hands. Whenever he swung his arms, dark sharp crescent-shaped energy would shoot forward, dissecting everything in its path. It isn't just him. The team members from Indulus Prime as a whole seemed to bear similar abilities with Falco. Ildris chimed in from the side. "So I wasn't the only one who noticed then," Teamy voiced with a hint of suspiciousness. "Well, I think it should be a little normal to find 1 or 2 persons across the universe with similar abilities with yourself. There aren't a lot to go around," he said with a contemplative tone as he tethered on whether this was something to be suspicious of or not. "Right, Gustav?" E asked. "They haven't performed any suspicious acts that have caught my eyes yet," Gustav responded. You see, guys, y'all are worried about Noth. He didn't get to complete his statement when Gustav interrupted. That doesn't mean I don't find them suspicious, Gustav stated. Oh. Turned to stare back at one of the screens above with squinted eyes. While you are correct, some things are just too similar to be merely coincidental. You guys should keep an eye out and tell me if you spot anything suspicious, Gustav added with a serious tone. They all responded affirmatively and kept watching the ongoing third batch. The team members from Indulus Prime were all dressed the same way, and each gave off the same form of presence and energy. They all emitted dark mist like Falco recently would from his forehead whenever he activated his bloodline. It was hard to tell teammate from teammate, since they all pretty much looked the same except for their differences in height. Gustav already had a few suspicions since he witnessed the prowess of their captain, Irond, during the river-splitting challenge. After observing them, he noticed that they didn't seem to have human-like skin, since all God eyes showed to him was ink black and multiple hollow parts that on their bodies that were hidden by the bandage-like wraps covering them. There was no doubt that they weren't humans. However, in some instances their application of the power of darkness was very similar to Falco's. Whilst this had put them on Gustav's radar, it wasn't enough to have any suspicions about them. Gustav had thrown them to the back of his mind till Falco began acting up recently. At this point, everything and everyone was suspicious to him, so he wouldn't mind holding on to the littlest of strands. Somehow their accommodation center is always shrouded in a layer of darkness. Gustav knew he was unable to see through other planets' accommodation area using God eyes unless he didn't care about setting off alarms. However, he had noticed that the Indulus Prime accommodation area would be shrouded in an extra layer of darkness. Almost like they couldn't trust the protection measures set in place by the Osis. Were they trying to keep eyes out? Or were they trying to keep something in? Either way, Gustav found this to be a little bit more suspicious. The sacred jewel should also be able to see through, but it would be the same as God eyes. Alarms would go off. I need something, or rather someone who can do it naturally, like it doesn't have to be an ability that should be activated. At this point, only one person came to mind. Gustav made his decision at this point. After 2 more batches, an Earth participant was finally picked to be amongst the next 150 participants. Finally, Teamy voiced from the side as one of them stood to their feet. Haha, Eldris, show him who's boss. Yelled from the side as the silver-haired 71 member in Theer midst wore a faint smile. Do you have someone in mind? Eldris turned to Gustav's position with his eyes still shut as usual. No. I trust in your judgment. Pick any opponent you wish to, Gustav responded. All right then, Eldris nodded before stepping forward elegantly and confidently. Chapter 1247 All right then, Eldris nodded before stepping forward elegantly and confidently. One major difference between Eldris' air of confidence and that of Gustav's was that there was no ounce of pride in the way he carried himself. Eldris looked kind as well as charismatic and confident to anyone. It would be difficult to have any bone to pick with him. Eldris soon arrived at the stage that was decided for him and began checking out his options for selection. At the same time Eldris was busy with this, loud beeps rang out deciphering that a couple of participants had already picked their opponents. A look of surprise appeared on the faces of many spectators as they noticed a beam of light in the Earth participants' area. One of them had been challenged by a participant from this batch. The Earth group turned to stare at the long, dark-haired female with a doll-like face who had a holographic panel floating before her. They turned to stare at Gustav as well with speculative expressions. Yuhiko gazed upon the panel that displayed the name of the participant who had issued the challenge, as well as the planet they represented. Itris, Planet Zillion, has challenged you to a battle. Accept, decline, due to her points being way higher than that of Itris. The option to either accept or decline the battle had been presented to her. Yuhiko turned to stare at Gustav, waiting for him to give her an instruction. Gustav, on the other hand, had his gaze fixated in a particular direction. His vision had phased past 47 different stages before arriving at the one he was aiming for. A reddish-skinned figure clad in yellow robes-like outfit stood on a white platform with spiky tips scattered across the place. It looked like the figure was staring in the direction of Earth participants as well. The Zillions happened to all have red skins with very slim figures, onion-shaped heads, and fiery grass-like hair. Despite their similar appearances, their red skins had fingerprint-like markings all over. This made each of them possess unique appearances since these carvings came in different styles, like how every human had a different fingerprint from others. Idris recalled what his captain had mentioned earlier as he stood in place. It's time to probe them now. They may look untouchable due to their performance since the start of the competition, but there's a loophole now, Captain Phlox voiced. The new member? Idris mumbled with a questioning tone. Yes. The one she was used to replaced is considered to be amongst the strongest. If he was a part of today's challenge, we would have to consider our options carefully. How are we sure the replacement isn't as strong as he is? Idris questioned. That is why this is a probe. If you win, we gain 1900 points and become the first to chip out of Earth's points. Captain Phlox responded. What if they turn down the challenge? That Earthling has over 8,000 points, while I only have 3,000, Idris added. Then that tells us all we need to know. The replacement is not powerful enough. Captain Phlox stated as a plan began formulating in his mind. Now, what will you do, Earthlings? Will you decline or accept? Idris' voice boomed loudly, causing the spectators' area to turn even noisier. Scared of my strength? Come on, face me, Earthling, Idris voiced once more. Dash, why are they hesitating? Dash, maybe that replacement truly isn't strong enough. Dash, haha, the Earthlings are a joke for replacing one of their strongest with this weakling. As Yuhiko heard the voices of the spectators in the background, her forehead scrunched up in frustration. These bastards! She yelled internally, but did her best to keep her composure on the outside. Can I accept? She questioned. Decline? Gustav's response was like a hot knife piercing through her pupils. But, decline? Gustav left no room for arguments as his tone commanded compliance. Yuhiko's fingers trembled slightly as she reached out to tap the decline panel area. Planet Earth has declined the battle challenge. Woa, the entire arena erupted into loud exchange of dialogues. Yuhiko wasn't the first person with a higher number of points declining a battle challenge, but she was the first from Earth. This warranted discussions in different parts of the arena. Dash, so that replacement truly isn't powerful. Dash, they should have just left the Falco guy in the team. Dash, who knows what happened that they had to switch to a weaker member. Dash, what a pity. The Earth is the biggest joke right now. Ridiculing glares were piercing into Yuhiko from every direction as she clenched her fist in silent anguish. I could have won that battle. Is he just trying to humiliate me? She wondered internally. I think you should take a look at. Meanwhile, Eldris had picked his opponent from Planet Foing. His opponent couldn't decline the match since Eldris had more points. Other participants in this batch had also picked their opponents who were approaching their locations or was already on stage. Only Idris was left having to pick another opponent either from Earth or from another planet. He couldn't try to challenge Yuhiko again, as this wasn't allowed due to the rules. He clicked on another planet and picked someone who had lesser points than he did this time. Captain Phlox had mentioned that he could pick anyone else if he was declined. On Eldris' end, he stood before an opponent with a white cloak and emerald glowing eyes. Your eyes are pretty, Eldris complimented. Yours are, shut. You must be blind. The opponent had a look of confusion as he stood in place. How are you able to tell that my eyes are pretty if you can't see? The participant from Planet Foing questioned. That's my secret, Eldris smiled. Eldris, Planet Earth, versus Rodradiv, Planet Foing. The instant the go-ahead was given, Rodradiv charged at Eldris as glowing nail-sized gems appeared around him. He grabbed one of the glowing gems and flung it at Eldris while charging at him. Eldris swerved to the side to dodge the nail-sized gem when it suddenly expanded, covering up his entire line of sight in an instant. Eldris swiftly leapt upwards, dodging the collision of the massive green-shaped gem. Why, multiple of the small-sized gems floating around Rodradiv flew upwards, chasing after Eldris' ascending figure. One of them sped past Eldris in mid-air, while two others arrived on both sides of his body. The last gem followed from below speedily as well. Zi, 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 Zi. The four small-sized gems suddenly expanded in mid-air, surround Eldris' figure from all sides. Rodradiv, who was below, raised his hand and clenched it tightly. All four massive balls instantly got attracted to each other, with Eldris being the only obstacle in their midst. Eldris suddenly pulled his arms back and spun his body in midair, causing himself to begin descending fast. His feet collided with the big gem below first as he descended, while all the rest of the three balls were only 1 feet away from making contact and smudging his entire body in between. Boom! The four balls collided heavily in midair, causing the vicinity to tremble violently as they immediately separated from one another. Bang! 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 They ricocheted across the vicinity, topping trees and leaving holes in mountains, as even their creator struggled to keep up. Rodrativ quickly made them lessen and swung his palm backwards to make them retract in his direction. Eldris landed on a mountain ahead in the next instant, and Made stretched his arm forward, making a V shape with his thumb and index finger inches from his eyes, which still remained shut. A smile appeared on his face as he sped forward in the next moment. At the instant, underneath his armpit area were 2 viander eggs, which he held with a slight look of dissatisfaction despite being unbothered about his injuries. I ran into some trouble, Gustav voiced before turning to face Eldris. Eldris nodded and handed the storage button in his possession to Gustav. As Gustav made use of gravitational manipulation, the eggs in his grasp floated while he passed Eldris' storage button back to him as well. Zing! Zing! The 2 viander eggs vanished from sight at the same moment. All of Gustav's burns and cuts healed up completely. His skin returned to its usual rosy color, along with his dirty blonde hair exuding an enchanting allure. All captains are required to place the eggs they have acquired into any of the flaming cauldrons for proper calculation. Handler One's voice reverberated across the entire vicinity as flaming cauldrons began rising from the ground at the corners of the arena. Each cauldron was as large as a full-grown human, so there wouldn't be any issues with putting the viander eggs in. The captains began heading to the cauldrons to place their eggs in. At the moment, the screens floating above displayed the scoreboards without scores. Only the planet names were visible. Each time a captain placed a viander egg in one of the cauldrons, scores would appear before their planet name on the screens and their position would move up. Chapter 1248. Rodrativ pushed his palm forward, causing over 40 gems to fly upwards at insane speed in Eldris' direction. The moment they expanded, the entire air was covered in massive gem-like balls without a single channel of escape for Eldris. It looked like Eldris was going to be heavy crushed by the lineup of massive gems shooting across the air at this moment. Eldris suddenly opened his eyes. Rodrativ, who was below, felt like time had come to a standstill at this instant as the world was suddenly drained of colors. Uhu! The sound of astonishment from the spectators' area showed that they were just as shocked as the color drain was spreading beyond the stage these two were battling within. Bam! Eldris stretched his hand forth to touch the massive gem before him, which had turned from green to gray. Tyish, the gem suddenly crumbled to dust particles upon contact as Eldris descended from the air. Such beautiful eyes! Rodrativ entered a state of temporary awe as he stared at Eldris' eyes, which possessed a spectrum of unknown number of colors. Rodrativ wasn't the only one who was awed. The spectators and participants who had never witnessed Eldris open his eyes before were extremely stunned as well. These colors were like rings in his eyes, which were all blended in perfectly, making them look like a different dimension where only colors existed. Rodrativ felt like he was in a swampy location as his movements turned sluggish. His gems had lost almost all power when their color got drained. The vicinity had turned into Eldris' domain, as he was the only being who retained color in this world of black and white. Eldris landed before Rodrativ and thrust his left palm forward. Rodrativ had wanted to counter, but with his sluggish movement and the reduction in strength of his gems, he was unable to react quickly. Bam! Eldris' fist slammed into Rodrativ's chest, sending his entire body shooting across the air. Spectrum bind, Eldris muttered as he locked his thumbs together, casing circular multicolored strings to appear around Rodrativ in midair. The glowing multicolored strings wrapped around Rodrativ's entire body from top to bottom, making him look like he was clad in a new type of fabric as his body spiraled repeatedly in midair. Adres raised his right index finger, causing Rodrativ to be suspended in midair. At this point, He was struggling to escape the binds, but to no avail. He couldn't control his gems in this state. Neither was he strong enough to rip through the spectrum bind. His body wriggled continuously in mid-air, while Eldris stood in place for a bit before making a backwards motion with his index finger. Rodradiv's completely bound body flew towards Eldris and stopped when it arrived before him. HMHH. HMHH. Eldris made another small motion, causing Rodradiv's mouth area to be freed. I've lost, haven't I? Rodradiv voiced with a look of defeat. Unless you throw in the match you haven't, but you did good. Eldris smiled while responding. The moment you opened your eyes it was over for me. You are a great opponent, Rodradiv voiced with a respectful tone before yelling out a declaration. I give up. Eldris, Planet Earth, wins, 500 pointies attained, Yarawa, chatter. 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 Some of the spectators' area, especially where Earth was located, went bonkers. Cheers and all sorts of remarks erupted, causing the place to turn super noisy. Eldris. 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 They cheered for Eldris as he closed his eyes, causing the vicinity to return to tranquility. Rodradiv was freed and regained his color. His body fell from mid-air after the spectrum bind disappeared. Good one. Eldris reached out his arm to help him up. Thank you. Rodradiv took Eldris' arm and got pulled up. This gesture solicited cheers from the spectators from both Planet Earth and Fohang's positions. Eldris and Rodradiv each left the stage with barely any injuries and newfound respect for each other. This made the atmosphere warm and peaceful compared to other locations in the arena. He's right. The battle ended the moment Eldris opened his eyes, Gustav muttered. I think you should take a look at with the new strength his teammates had gained before Aesop. Some of them still had abilities they had never displayed and probably would never display in some situations. Eldris happened to have a combination of new abilities he couldn't even make use of in this battle since it would cause death if the opponent was unable to counter. He had to play it safe so as not to get branded with a penalty. He's getting real close, the system voiced in Gustav's mind. Yeah, I noticed. That spectrum bind he made use of was almost similar. Gustav responded internally as Eldris arrived back in their midst. Usually it is meant to go with the abilities of the being who unlocks it, so this little unexpected energy emissions are normal. Only your case was different because your cosmic superiority is kinda abnormal, the system voiced. You don't need to keep reminding me that I'm a freak in every given opportunity. Gustav squinted his eyes. Yes, I do. As always, F you. Fuck you too. You're a virtual being. You will never know how it feels to do that. How long till he unlocks it? Gustav questioned. It depends. Could be months, or could be what? So this is why you stopped her. I'll hand it to you. You're a pretty smart little earthling. A humanoid-looking being with an armadillo-structured face said with a tone of amusement. I care not for your thoughts or unnecessary remarks. Do you have it? Yes or no? The dark-skinned male with beautiful-looking dreadlocks voiced from across the table. Don't be in such a rush. Join me for a meal first, the armadillo-faced creature suggested. Do I look like I am in the mood for any of your antics? This is a business transaction. I am not your friend. Neither am I an accomplice of yours. Do you have the item? The dark-skinned young male voiced with seriousness, his face lacking any form of friendliness. Aish, just look at that big scowl on your face. You almost reminded me of her. The armadillo-faced creature was about rambling away again when he noticed the sharp gaze from across the table and stopped. All right, young Mr. Stark. The item you're asking for, Koshka Shot, is currently unavailable, the armadillo-faced creature stated. And frankly, I am unaware of how you came to know of that item in the first place. Not only is it amongst the most difficult to obtain, it is also illegal in most planets under the Alliance, including yours, the creature added. What is with all this long talk? I thought they said you were the greatest collector in the universe, Stark voiced with a ridiculing tone. No, you're not. Since you are not willing to do the needful, you'll find a collector who can, Stark blurted out while standing to his feet. Hold on. I didn't say I couldn't get it. I only said it was unavailable right now. Axeler quickly stopped him before he could storm off. Then why are you boring me with unnecessary details? Are you going to get it? Or do I need to use a different collector? Stark questioned while squinting his eyes. I will get it. Damn, you're so uptight compared to how you acted around that other kid and Amy. Axeler felt like he was speaking to a different person. Neither of them must hear of this. It has to be confidential between the two of us, Stark chimed in. No problem. I also have to leave here since I already gave wrong information to all of my clients anyways. Things will get messy if they come for me, Axeler voiced in defeat. Miss Amy had given him quite the work. He knew he would definitely acquire enemies after this. It will take some time to get the item. I most likely won't get back till after IYS. Or rather after that crazy occurrence has passed, Axeler announced. Crazy occurrence? What do you mean? Stark inquired with a look of confusion. It doesn't matter. I will contact you once I have acquired it and tell you where to meet because it won't be on this planet, Axeler voiced before walking away. Stark still had a look of confusion on his face, but he soon threw that aside as he stared at the screen within the restaurant that displayed the ongoing versus battle challenge. Gustav made that new replacement decline another challenge. He must be playing at something, Stark muttered as he turned around. I should probably head back to the arena to witness this in person, he added while walking out of the place. Sheesh, sheesh, sheesh. Two figures who were undoubtedly powerful appeared behind him the moment he stepped out of the structure. Family head, how did the negotiations go? Chapter 1249. Two figures who were undoubtedly powerful appeared behind him the moment he stepped out of the structure. Family head, how did the negotiations go? One of them questioned. He'll contact us when he acquires it, Stark responded as they walked away together. I can't believe he made me decline another one. Yuhiko stared at Gustav from the corner of her eyes with annoyance building from within her. Currently, the 8 batch was ongoing. Yuhiko had been challenged again by a participant from planet Orion this time. Gustav made Yuhiko decline, and this made it her second time. This meant that Yuhiko only had a single declining chance left, and points would start getting deducted after that. Didn't think that dude would challenge someone else in our group after Yuhiko declined, Timmy voiced from the side. And he went after Vera. Iske. Matilda shook her head in pity. He probably thought she was weak, Rhea chimed in. Vera is usually silent most of the times and can easily be unnoticeable. It is understandable why he thinks she's weak, Elders stated. But she is gonna win, right? Rhea voiced with a slightly worried expression. Gustav watched the ongoing battle with an observant expression as usual. Her opponent was a being with glowing silver wings and a halo floating above his radish-shaped head. A world of dense forestry surrounded them as the Orion participants sped across the air, swerving repeatedly to dodge thick vines shooting from below with speed. These vines were each almost as thick as a grown adult with all sorts of prickly thorns surrounding them. It seemed like they could lengthen infinitely and were flexible enough to twist as well as curve in mid-air to the manipulator's desire. These vines snapped at the Orion participant repeatedly, trying to swat him down from the air like a fly to no avail. Swee-eyed, he managed to evade about 4 of them as he spun across the air while reaching out to grab the glowing halo floating above his head. Vera, whose body was hidden within the thickness of this forestry below and many vines surrounding her, stretched forth her arm. The instant she performed this action, 4 more thick vines shot upwards with immense speed, surrounding the Orion participant in nearly an instant. Seeing the 8 thick vines surrounding him, he flung the halo he was holding onto, causing it to spin furiously as it cut across the air with intense speed. Threery-eye, the first 2 vines swatting at him were instantly cleaved in 2 before they could make contact with him. Greenish liquid spurted out in a frenzy as the Orion participant swerved to the side in the next instant, dodging the 3rd vine that had just swerved forward. SWWHII, he spun to the side while swinging one of his hoof-like legs forward. Bang! A forceful kick slammed into the side of the 3rd vine, causing it to shoot forward uncontrollably. The Orion participant's silver wings flapped intensely, sending a burst of wind across the vicinity as he swept upwards with speed. One of the vines was fast enough to follow after his ascending figure, wrapping around his foot first. As this vine held onto him strongly, his figure uncontrollably halted in the sky. He was about to attack the vine when 2 others snapped from the east and west, wrapping around his figure very quickly. Aha! The Orion participant groaned as his figure got completely entangled within the massive vines that had wrapped around him. What everyone had thought would be an easy win for the Orion participant was starting to unexpectedly drag out, and it seemed to be in the favor of Vera. They have no idea that this battle could be ended instantly if Vera willed it. Gustav nearly shook his head in pity for the ignorant fools who thought Vera way a mixed blood. She is definitely the most dangerous living creature here right now. The system chipped in. I've told her to be cautious of how she uses it so she hasn't implanted in anyone in quite some time. This much is okay so long as he doesn't get close to her, Gustav said internally as he kept his eyes on the battle. The glow of the participant's silver wings had been completely hidden within the entrapment of the vines as he struggled to free himself. Thuria, a loud whirring sound pierced through the air as a glowing spinning circle cut across the sky at high speed. Clearorg, the halo cut through the thickness of 3 vines in the next moment, finding its way to the hand of its owner. Tyan. The Orion participant grabbed his halo after getting a little breathing space and quickly swung upwards with speed. Fly, fly, fly. His hands moved very quickly as he slashed repeatedly, causing pieces of the vines to rain from the air. The instant he was freed, he swept downwards with speed. I think you should take a look at Thrih. Smaller vines shot upwards to deter him once more, but his figure spun, very quickly slicing every single vine that approached him into multiple pieces. Bang! She is definitely in there, he thought as he slashed his way forward quickly, ready to deal the winning blow to his opponent who had tormented him for long enough. Sui, the glow of the spinning halo, encompassed the environment as he flung it at the lazy massive tree like vegetation that stood in his path. A sharp energy tore through the vicinity as many other trees and vines were cleaved easily without as much as a contact from the glowing halo. He exclaimed in confusion after his line of sight had been cleared of vegetation. There was not a single person in sight like he had expected. No one except him is allowed to hurt me. A soft feminine voice rang out from behind. Pa. The Orion participant suddenly felt a soft hand clasp onto his left shoulder, causing him to wince as he tried to quickly turn around. Unfortunately, he felt his sense of self fading as the world around him turned white. What is going on? These were his last thoughts as he fell to his knees with the hand still positioned on his left shoulder. Wah! The entire spectator area erupted with voices of disbelief and confusion as they stared at the girl with green and white hair standing behind her opponent who she had subjected to his knees. They couldn't understand what was going on as what happened next was Vera muttering some words that were too low in volume for them to hear. Dash, what did she do? Dash, I have to admit, I didn't see that coming. Dash, we had such a participant? How come we never knew her capabilities till now? Even in the Earth spectators area, they were greatly shocked. Vera had just performed a feat that put her amongst the strongest. A few seconds later, the Orion participant fell face flat onto the ground and passed out. It was unknown what damage had been caused, but there was no doubt that Vera had one. Vera, planet Earth, wins, 1100 points attained. This was one of TH's largest points that had been acquired since the Versus Battle Challenge began. No one had expected Vera to win, and even if she had lost, it would have only been a 600 points deduction. Planet Orion had truly lost more than they had bargained for in this one. Vera began walking back to the Earth's participants area with a straight expression while other battles continued. Dash, she really won just by touching him? Dash, she definitely has a very dangerous touch. Dash, she is to be avoided in future battles. An obsessive smile appeared on Vera's face as she arrived at the Earth's participants area. She ignored everyone else praising her for a job well done and stood before Gustav. Did I do well? She questioned with puppy eyes. You did a great job. Gustav smiled while rubbing her hair affectionately. She jumped into his embrace in the next instant, giggling like her face didn't just look scary a while ago with the straight expression she initially wore. Ahem. Angie grabbed Vera's hair from behind and pulled her from Gustav's embrace. Oh, but then, wouldn't it be delusional to think you could win against an opponent that is clearly more powerful than you are? Wong had an expression of confusion as he questioned. If the disparity in strength is immense, then yes, but if not, then there is definitely a chance of winning. Loss or win in a battle cannot be decided by strength alone. Uncertain and unexpected factors can lead to a completely turn of events during a battle, Gustav responded. Do you think you can defeat him? Wang asked. A smile appeared on Gustav's face after hearing this question. I guess we'll find out soon enough. The group also followed side by side with Gustav as they headed towards their accommodation area. As the participants witnessing the initial events by the side dispersed, two figures with transparent skin, green-eyed and white radish-shaped head, glared in the direction of the Earth participants leaving. We shall revenge the humiliation they brought upon my brother. That human must die by our hands. Chapter 1250 Misinformation Spreads 1250 Misinformation Spreads. Praise me again. Vera was acting like a happy little girl before Gustav. Some of them weren't surprised since they knew only Gustav could bring out this side of her, but the others were genuinely shocked as this was the first time they saw Vera had a proper dialogue with anyone. You've really made good progress and proud. Gustav patted her head again while the vicinity remained loud from battles. Bang, bang, boom, boom, boom. Some of the most intense battles were ensuing in about 5 different stages. The most intensive battles were participants from planets who were top 20. The spectators were even more fired up at this moment, as participants they had always wanted to see in a fight were finally battling. Glazer, throw in the towel before I beat you to a pulp. I'm giving you the same offer. Melthu, 2 figures, one with a large hole in his chest and the other structured like a mechanical bot voiced out before charging towards each other. On another stage too, participants from planet Kivendale and Torin were also facing each other and had laid waste to the surroundings. Since planet's participants had been mostly challenging weaker opponents so as to steal points easily, there had only been a few rare cases where the matchup were 2 powerful opponents of nearly equal standing. This time there were 5 of them, making the versus battle challenge way more entertaining than it had been at the start. Gustav was sure the handlers didn't expect this yet, since the turn of events so far would have led to weaker planets continuously getting picked on till all of their points were lost, which would eventually lead to the disqualification of weaker ones. No doubt this was how things would still unfold, but it was surprising that stronger planets had begun challenging one another already. The Fixic are one of the dark horses this year. By this time in the last ISOP they were already disqualified. Not just them. Albeit weird, the Diaperonians are still in the game. Let's not forget Indulus Prime. They were not even close to being this powerful in the last ISOP. Gustav could hear a group of oldies chattering away on the far end of the arena. It turned out Earth wasn't the only planet who had major improvements. What caught his ears was mostly the mention of planet Indulus Prime. Them again, truly getting more suspicious, Gustav thought. Other planets high on the ranking currently were usually amongst those who made it to the last stage. Earth always made it to the last stage as well but never won. This was the first time they had ever attained such a high rank. The planet that had won the last time were also currently the hosts, the Osis. The Draconids had come second the last time, but now things were different. Planet Osius was currently in 3rd position, almost like the places had been reversed. This time more powerful participants had come from different planets. Captain Strum was an anomaly himself, and so many other participants who were considered to be amongst the strongest. Earth was leading now, but it was still unknown who would win. Things could take a turn at any time. As time went by, the expectation of the handlers played out. At the 27th batch, up to 80 different planets had already lost the last of their points. Up to 100 others were slowly closing in on the brink of disqualification as well. Even if some didn't lose all of their points, they were still very troubled as the number of points needed to remain in ISOP was still unknown. Today was the 2nd day, and everyone would still have to wait till the 3rd day before the required points would be announced. In a particular part of the ISOP participants area, a group with horns on their necks seemed to be engaging in a small dialogue. Captain, are you sure we're going to be fine? We only have 11,000 points left. The information he gave mentioned that only planets with less than 10,000 points would be disqualified, so yes, we will be fine. Epsilon. If that is the case, then we don't need to worry much, but we should try not to lose more points. Indeed, the information is credible, but we shouldn't lag behind. In another area, Captain, we have only 9,000 points. We have to make sure we acquire up to 10,000 points before tomorrow. It will be one hell of a problem if we're less than 10,000 points at the end of today. In another area, Jimin just won her battle. She has acquired 600 extra points. This means we're in the clear now with 10,100 points. What a relief. These were all different planetary group having different dialogues, but one similar aspect was repeatedly emphasized. Less than 10,000 points, these teammates were discussing in very low tones, so no one would be able to pick up on what they were talking about. However, even if anyone did manage to pick up on their discussion, it would be difficult to understand what they were talking about unless one was given the full gist of things. Gustav had heard the mention of 10,000 points and was instantly able to tell what it was all about. Axeler wasn't kidding when he mentioned that over 80 planets came to him for information. He thought internally while fighting the urge to smirk. Some of them still have beyond it though, so they might not get disqualified based on the number required, the system voiced. I know, but a good number of them have relaxed after reaching 10,000 point, not knowing what is coming. They probably won't give it their all in the coming versus battles till after the disqualification period, which they think they will ace. Gustav was really fighting the urge to break out in maniacal laughter right now. Seeing the effects of what Stark had suggested and Miss Amy implemented by scaring Axeler into submission, he was glad he didn't refuse the suggestion. The misinformation would truly cause issues for those who purchased it. Time went by very quickly and another 10 batches had been concluded. During this time frame, Yuhiko had been challenged a couple more times and Gustav had her decline all of them. At this point, she already looked cranky and gashed her teeth from time to time as her fists remained clenched. Now I'm sure he just wants to humiliate me, Yuhiko thought as she clenched so hard that her fingers sunk into the skin of her palms. Try. Pat. Droplets of blood trickled down the gloves of her battle suit. Her body trembled slightly as she tried to hold in her anger. Pat. A small pat on the shoulder brought her out of her reverie as a warm, masculine voice followed. You're bleeding, Endrick said while passing her a small piece of handkerchief-like clothing. Endrick. Just as she was about to show appreciation, Endrick's face closed in on her left ear. Trust me, you deserve worse than just simply bleeding, he whispered in her ear coldly, causing shivers to run down her spine. I knew it. They truly had it out for me. Yuhiko froze in place as color left her face. They could both easily kill me if they want but didn't. They must want to torture me. Endrick turned around after the small whisper and began heading forward. Where are you going? Eldris questioned with a slightly confused expression, seeing as the batch just ended and the computerized systems were still picking out the next 150 participants. It's my turn now, Endrick replied. Immediately after he said this, Thryad, the list of 150 participants for the next batch, appeared on the screens above and Endrick's name, as well as his face, was included. How did you? E was about to question how in the world Endrick was aware that it was his turn, but Endrick was already far gone. How the hell did he know? E stared at Endrick, then stared in Gustav's direction with a befuddled expression. Gustav just displayed a clueless smile without responding. You two are really something else. E had this urge to scream this out. They were two monstrous brothers after all. I guess that time candidate thingy does come in handy for him, Gustav said internally while staring at Endrick enter a stage. You have no idea. The way your perception works on detecting things where you can practically see the actions of an enemy a split second before they perform it during a battle, Endrick has something similar as a time candidate. The difference is, he can perceive things before they happen, not just in battle but overall in any event or scenario, the system explained. Update on characters. Gustav, most voted and current readers' favorite male character. Angie, second most voted and current readers' favorite female character. Miss Amy, third most voted and second readers' favorite female character. EE, fourth place and second readers' favorite male character. Eldris, fifth place and third readers' favorite male character. Falco, sixth place and fourth readers' favorite male character. As for other characters, I haven't added them yet, so I apologize if your favorite character is not on the list. Comment the characters you wish to be added. Also remember, more votes decide how fast a character will be illustrated. Follow current novels on Top Novel Fool.com. Chapter 1251. Are you saying he can see the future? Gustav was a bit surprised as he wasn't aware of this. Not entirely, no. He can just sense and tell how certain events will play out seconds or maybe minutes before they do. I'm not completely sure about the time frame, but since he doesn't really see images or anything like that in his mind, it isn't that he sees the future. It's just prediction of sorts, the system added. If anyone heard this explanation, they would only understand vaguely, but Gustav completely understood what the system was talking about. On the stage, Indrik stood before what looked like a pavilion, as multiple of pavilions could be seen scattered across the vicinity. They caused Big Brother some trouble. It's only fair if I return the favor, he muttered while picking a planet to challenge. Dash, someone challenged us? Dash, who is it? Who dares? In the area where the Draconites were situated, a glowing panel had appeared before one of them, which obviously meant they had gotten challenged. Dash, an Earthling? Dash, it is that boy. Dash, they say he is the captain of Earth, little brother. Upon discovering that the challenge had been issued by Indrik, their expressions turned less prideful. This was no weak or ordinary foe. Panda's novel conflict between them and Earth participants hadn't been settled. It seemed like one was waiting for the other to challenge them first, and now that Indrik had broken the ice, things were about to get crazy soon. Moveard, he challenged you. Are you too cowardly to accept? Captain Strum voiced from the side with a solemn tone. I will make him regret taking this action, Moveard stated while reaching out to accept the challenge. That's more like it, Captain Strum voiced with a light chuckle. Moveard was just as tall as Captain Strum, but had green-shaped star patterns all across his body with a black and white face. He also had 4 legs and 6 arms. This was another aspect that made him looking different from Captain Strum, since Strum had only 2 legs. Moveard was a little more muscular, but no one doubted who was more powerful amongst both of them. Moveard was considered to be the 3rd strongest amongst all 20 teammates. Moveard accepted the challenge. I'm glad we're getting to see more battles between powerful youngsters. Who do you think will win? Moveard is very strong, but so is that Indrik kid, so it is hard to say. The acceptance of the challenge caused discussions to break out amongst spectators, especially in Earth and Draconet area. The Draconet spectators area just happened to be opposite Earth's on the other end of the arena. Bronze medially, do you think Moveard will win? At the first row of the Draconets area, a spectator questioned a female Draken who had red star-shaped marks all over with a calm demeanor. He knows he will be punished if he fails, so I will not doubt that he shall give this battle his all. The female Draken answered with a slight hint of intimation in her multiple eyes. Little Strum won't be too brutal now, will he? You seem to have given him a lot of leeway, the Draken on her right voiced with a dignified expression. He only does what is needed to bring home the title of champion, Browns medially answered, her tone giving off a hint of pride. The Draken at the side scoffed after hearing that, but didn't utter a response. They stared at Moveard moving up to the stage where Indrik was situated. Indrik stood before the massive, triangular structured golden pavilion with his back facing it. He was waiting for Moveard's appearance. Foom, a loud whooshing sound reverberated across the air as a body appeared in the sky. As Indrik bent his neck to stare upwards, Moveard descended with great speed. Thump, he landed before Indrik, causing a small ripple of dust to spread across the vicinity upon his descent. Indrik's neck remained bent as he stared back at Moveard, who was looking down on him due to their height difference. Moveard was taller than Eldris, who happened to be the tallest in their group, so it was no surprise Indrik had to look up. It was like standing before a giant, but situations like this was all too familiar to Indrik. Moveard gazed down upon him, obviously trying to show intimidation, and was starting to get furious when Indrik's expression remained calm. Indrik Oslov, Planet Earth, versus Moveard Hittel, Planet Draconet. Bang! Moveard suddenly launched 3 fists at Indrik the instant the go-ahead for battle was given. The attack had been so sudden and unexpected since spectators had thought they would at least give each other some distance before getting into it. I think you should take a look at Indrik's body flew across the air, passing through the spaces in between the pavilion after receiving the unexpected and devastatingly powerful fists. Moveard flew after him instantaneously, joining the fists from his 3 arms together. He arrived above Indrik's body and swung the 6 fists combined downwards. Bang! A loud collision rang out once more as shockwaves spread across the vicinity. Indrik's body could be seen catapulting downwards, but the moment he was close to hitting the ground, he did a flip. Beam. Indrik landed on his feet, without a single scratch on him. He saw the attacks coming and had protected himself with layers of telekinetic energy before contact was made. Besides this, Indrik always had a standby layer of telekinetic energy less than an inch from his skin, but not a single person was aware of this. Nobody had touched Indrik's real skin in a long time because this layer was active every second of the day. Indrik stared upwards to see Moviard descending at impressive speed with his arms arched backwards. Indrik's eyes emitted a silvery blue glow as he raised his right hand and swept it upwards forcefully. A strange energy spread from his figure as an invisible force shot upwards with intensity. That's his power. I am aware. Moviard threw fists forward the instant he sensed the energy. Bang, 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 bang. Heavy collisions rang out like explosions going off as Moviard clashed repeatedly with Indrik's telekinetic force before managing to land a couple of feet ahead of him. Flywhy Moviard charged forward, sending out a flurry of punches that were so swift, leaving the spectators to witness multiple blurs. Pa! Indrik snapped his fingers, causing telekinetic walls to appear before him as he stepped backwards. Swihii, Indrik appeared hundreds of feet away as these telekinetic walls appeared before him like layers. Bang, 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 bang. Moviard continuously moved with speed and vigor, smashing through the telekinetic walls with barrages of fists. Fwoosh! Indrik's body swerved to the side as he circled around the approaching opponents. Throwing his fist forward, a telekinetic force shot at Moviard in an approach to tackle him from the side while he was dealing with the walls. Moviard spared an arm to throw a fist at the approaching force of energy that was forcefully ripping through the air. Bang! Upon contact, Moviard's entire body was sent flying intensely. Ugh! He groaned as the fist he had spared to counter wasn't powerful enough. His telekinetic energy is stronger than a while ago? Moviard came to a realization as his giant body spiraled across the air. Indrik stood in the same position and snapped his fingers again. Moon drop. Just as Moviard was about to stabilize his body in midair, he felt a great pressure descend from above. His body paused for a brief instant before he shot down at extremely high speed. Bang! The stage across a radius of 5,000 feet instantly caved the moment he hit the ground. From the spectator's point of view, it looked as like Moviard's body slamming onto the stage was the reason for this. However, people like Gustav knew there were other factors involved. Indrik had dropped a telekinetic attack shaped like the moon on Moviard. The weight, force, and speed at it which descended were all factors that caused the entire stage to cave. Moviard, who was now bleeding from his head and some parts of his body, tried to get up when he felt another powerful force descending. This time he quickly reacted by raising his 6 arms to stop it. Bang! The sound of collision rang out once more as a small ripple of wind spread forth across the vicinity. However, this time Moviard had managed to catch the telekinetic attack. His 4 legs planted firmly into the ground as his body was positioned in an arch, while his hands trembled from the weight. Moviard gritted his teeth as he stopped Indrik's moondrop this time. However, before he could take any action, he spotted Indrik up ahead, snapping his fingers from his left hand. Moviard's 7 eyes widened as his face scrunched up. Thriss. Chapter 1252, Moviard's 7 eyes widened as his face scrunched up. Thriss, the familiar pressure he felt a while ago, doubled as Indrik activated another moondrop while the current one was still active. Boom! Another shockwave spread across the entire vicinity as dust particles and debris was formed from the force of collision. The visibility from the stage was greatly hindered, leaving a lot of the spectators with looks of intrigue and awe. Amongst the many stages where battles were ongoing, this happened to be one that had experienced the most destruction in a very short duration. The debris that covered the air hadn't even cleared when the sound of collisions began to ring out again. The less powerful spectators couldn't see through all of that, but Gustav and many others knew exactly what was going on. Indrik leapt backwards within the debris-covered environment. Bang! In the next instant, A massive dark arm fisted a hole through the ground of the area. He just evaded as the massive arm swung across the air. Wind spread from it, clearing the entire vicinity. The moment clarity was regained, everyone spotted a massive shadowy figure hovering above the area where Moviard was positioned. It turned out that Moviard had summoned his Encore at the last split second to bear the weight of the Indrik's second moon drop. After the visibility of the environment reduced immensely, the Encore tried attacking Indrik. Fortunately, Indrik could see clearly, so he was aware that his second attack had gotten flanked. He immediately released his energy and swerved to the side to dodge the attack of the Encore. The Draconet Encores always varied in sizes, and Moviard's happened to be larger than that of Captain Strum's, but it still wasn't the largest in the group. The Encore looked like it was wearing a pointy hat, but that was just the shape of its head. The rest of its body looked like it was in a shadowy gown as it stood over 120 feet tall. Moviard raised two of his arms and pushed two others forward while letting the last two face the ground. The instant he performed this action, 3 green rings emitting bright glows appeared in midair before the massive Encore. These green rings each had different sizes and were positioned around separate heights in midair before the Encore. The Encore stood proudly with arms extended, ready to follow whatever command its conjurer gave. Indrik channeled his bloodline intensely at this point, causing his black, curly hair to flutter as wind began gathering around him. Moviard moved at this instant. Fwyi, the moment he sped forward, he closed in the distance between himself and Indrik. It was almost like summoning his Encore had given him a boost in speed. Indrik's body fluidly moved sideways as he tried evading the furious swings of Moviard, who still had a bloody face. Thrying, one of the green glowing circles suddenly descended with speed, appearing in between Indrik and Moviard. Indrik's eyes widened in realization as he swiftly leapt backwards and pushed his right hand forward, conjuring telekinetic barriers before him in successions. The moment Moviard's fists went through the glowing green ring, hundreds of fists suddenly appeared on the other side. Bang, 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 bang. The combined forces of these hundreds of fists blasted through the telekinetic barriers Indrik had conjured, arriving before him in powerful waves. Bam! Indrik conjured one last telekinetic, covering over his entire figure as he got blasted across the air intensely. The stage grounds had forcefully split into multiple cracks despite its already decimated state due to the multiplication of Moviard's fist. As Indrik's body shot across the air, the Encore thrusted its palms in his direction. Indrik reacted by quickly pushing his palms upwards to conjure a telekinetic wall that would protect him. However, in the last instant, he noticed that one of the green glowing circles had appeared between his body and the palms of the giant Encore. Blink! Indrik blinked while pointing east. In the next instant, the shadowy large palms phased through the glowing green ring, and hundreds of them suddenly appeared all across the vicinity. Bang! 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 If it wasn't for the barrier covering the circumference of the stage, the entire arena would no doubt have been affected by this battle. I think you should take a look at Indrik reappeared about 3,000 feet away from his initial location right before the dome that covered the stage, since there wasn't any more room for him to teleport to. A rectangular-shaped telekinetic barrier surrounded his figure as the shock waves from the barrages of the massive shadowy palms continuously descended upon the ground. Bang! It heavily slammed into the barrier he used in surrounding himself, causing Indrik to pour even more energy into it. Flyish, a green circle suddenly appeared before him, and from the other end came 6 fists shooting forward at the same time. Blink! Indrik used Blink again the instant Moviard's fist phased through the glowing green ring that had just appeared before him. Swyi, his figure emitted a silver glow as he vanished the moment hundreds of fists tore through the telekinetic barrier he had just conjured. Bang! 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 The dome covering the stage flickered repeatedly upon the powerful collisions from hundreds of Moviard's fists. However, it still managed to hold as Moviard retracted his fist after missing Indrik. "You can't run forever, weakling," Moviard yelled as he turned around and began flying in the direction Indrik had just reappeared in. On the Earth spectators area, they watched with tensed expressions. Dash, this movie-eared person is giving our Indrik a tough time. Dash, he became stronger after that thing appeared on the stage. Dash, it is called an encore, and yes, it is meant to boost the abilities of the Drakons. They exchanged dialogues wondering how Indrik would get the chance to counterattack. Talk more of winning. Gustav watched from his position with an indifferent expression as usual. While the Earth spectators were worried and the Drakons were cheering Movieard on, he analyzed the ongoing battle. The rings multiplies anything that goes through it. Gustav wasn't the only one that figured this out. However, besides the Drakons, he was the only one that knew it actually multiplied everything that went through it, and not just Movieard attacks alone. It would be very difficult for Indrik to get the chance to counterattack. The shockwaves are too powerful, so even if he doesn't get hit directly by any of the attacks, the shockwaves are still enough to cause a lot of damage. The system analyzed as well. Gustav's eyes emitted a scarlet and green glow with a hint of gold as his vision remained fixated on the battle. Readings from God Eyes put the strength of these attacks to be capable of destroying a moon, Gustav said internally. Yeah, but will Indrik? Oh, hell went all right. I have no doubts about that. Gustav was still the only one who knew Indrik was currently not using all he had. Indrik was the time candidate after all. The places he had ventured into were legendary locations that would scare the powers currently spectating Aesop. He had a lot of tricks up his sleeves. Currently on the stage, Indrik was starting to take damage as he couldn't keep evading the onslaught of attacks that gave him not a single moment of breathing space. His telekinetic barriers cracked multiple times as he was running out of space to blink to. Can I activate my universe here? Indrik asked internally as he kept getting tossed from place to place. The barrier covering the stage prevents anyone from leaving till the battle is over. Activating your universe will be hindered because it is just like leaving. Of course you could overpower it, but we are unaware if that will lead to any disqualification or not, so I do not advise it, Husarius answered from within. That's quite problematic, Indrik thought, but he wasn't too bothered. He'll just need to win some other way then, he thought as he activated Blink again. Indrik vanished the moment fists approached from the left and right simultaneously. Movieard and his encore missed Indrik again as he appeared thousands of feet at the east. The moment he reappeared in another location, they moved like it had already been predicted. However, in that split second of freedom, a purplish gauntlet appeared in Indrik's grasp. The instant he wore it on his right arm, energy built up around him very quickly. Fwy, telekinetic charge. Indrik voiced as Movieard appeared before him while a silvery blue wave of energy burst forth from his being, immensely spreading across the entirety of the stage in an instant. Movieard as well as his encore got pushed backwards, but at this same instant something noticeable happened. The moment part of the telekinetic charge phased through the green glowing rings, its intensity multiplied. Bang! The massive encore was blasted back intensely as the wave bore a hole into the ground that was thousands of feet deep. Wah! Chapter 1253. A gentle reminder not to purchase privilege until I announce that it is ready for purchase. Bang! The massive encore was blasted back intensely as the wave bore a hole into the ground that was thousands of feet large. The encore slammed into the dome on the other side, and Movieard fell to his knees in the next instant. Core. He coughed out blood after his encore took damage. It wasn't that Indrik was not aware that the encore was also the weakness of Draconets, he just hadn't gotten the opportunity to deal it any damage. He wasn't aware that the rings would multiple attacks from an opponent, as well, so this pleasantly took him by surprise. It's my turn now. Taking hold of this opportunity, Indrik sent forth a massive telekinetic hand which wrapped around Movieard's entire body, lifting him into the air before slamming him onto the already decimated ground. Swy, bang, bang, bang. Swy. Indrik kept waving his hand across the place, causing Movieard's figure to slam into the ground and the dome surrounding the vicinity. Ugh! Movieard groaned in pain while trying to free himself. He had taken more damage in the process, however. This didn't last as the encore at the far end of the stage stood up shortly after Indrik's telekinetic charge. The green glowing rings shot forward as it charged in Indrik's direction. Indrik turned his face to the side as he spotted one of the gigantic green glowing rings appear before him with incoming attacks from the encore. At this moment, something spectacular occurred. Indrik sped in the direction of the glowing green ring like he was charging towards his death, while the fist from the Encore was only 1 feet away from phasing through the ring. Pa! Thwash! Indrik snapped his finger, causing a telekinetic barrier to appear between the fist of the Encore and the ring, preventing it from going through. Krrryychhhh, it only took a split second for the Encore to blast through the barrier. Bang! However, the momentary delay gave Indrik enough time to arrive in front of the ring before the Encore. Moviard, who had gotten freed after Indrik performed this foolhardy action, realized what Indrik was trying to do. All of his eyes widened as he jumped to his feet and charged forward with all of his might, ignoring the multiple injuries on his body. No! He yelled with an horrified expression as he watched Indrik leap through the glowing green ring. The instant Indrik's body phased through the ring, he felt an indescribable feeling, like his body was being split apart. In theory, his cells, consciousness, and everything that made up his existence were replicating at insane rate. Wah! The voices of the spectators rang out as over 300 Indriks appeared all across the stage. I am everywhere, Indrik voiced in surprise, but then covered his mouth as he noticed that his exact words had been chanted by every single replication, causing the surroundings to tremble. He could control every single one of his replications with ease since he felt like his mind was within all of them. He didn't know how long this would last, so only one thought appeared in the minds of all the Indriks. Yaha! A battle roar rang out from the army of Indriks as they all activated their telekinetic energy at the same time. Ghrrhhhhh. Fwy, a tremendous pressure descended upon the entire vicinity, giving neither Moviard or his Encore the chance to evade. Bang! Bang! They didn't fall to their knees. They fell face flat on the ground, unable to battle against the combined force of the Indriks. Moviard was lifted into the air in the next instant and tossed across the place. Bang! 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 An Indrik would drive a fist into his face, causing him to catapult towards another direction. Another Indrik would be waiting for him a couple of feet away, who would also slam Moviard with a heavy fist, causing him to shoot in a different direction. Bang! 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 At this point, they had turned Moviard into a lawn tennis ball. They kept swatting him across the place like a fly, leaving him no chance to fight back. I think you should take a look at a couple of Indrik's activated Moondrop, causing Moviard's Encore to be completely crushed under its weight as the Moondrops stacked atop each other. Moviard was not only outwardly damaged at this moment, he has also sustained internal injuries from the brutality his Encore suffered in the hands of the Indriks. Moviard's Encore was stronger than the usual, but after getting damaged continuously, it finally vaporized, leaving a gust of dark mist. The Indriks formed a massive catapult-like weapon with their telekinetic prowess combines. A massive pillar-like projectile which was close to 100 feet in length was mounted before it. The other Indriks, dealing with Moviard on the other end, suddenly grabbed hold of him and ascended into the air. Fwy, they flung him in the direction of the massive catapult-like weapon that had been formed from telekinesis. The massive pillar-like projectile went off at this instant with over 20 Indriks pouring their energies into it to increase its mass and speed. Bang! A loud crash rang out as the tip of pillar-like telekinetic projectile slammed heavily into Moviard's body. Powerful shockwaves spread across the place along with the sound of bones cracking as Moviard's face caved in. Through room, the telekinetic projectile kept ascending with Moviard's body still stamped to its tip before it collided with the barrier above. Boom! A loud explosive-like crash reverberated across the vicinity as the barrier whittled away instantly. Fortunately, the barrier seemed to have layers, and only the first layer seemed to have been destroyed by that attack. Otherwise, Moviard's body would have been sent to outer space. Thry, the multiple Indriks began to vanish, and in the next moment, only a single Indrik was left standing in the middle of a completely disfigured battle stage. Pa! He snapped his finger, causing the telekinetic projectile to disappear. The moment it vanished, Moviard's unconscious and battered body began falling from the air. Witnessing this, everyone knew the battle was over at this point. At Draconid's spectators area, all sort of glances were being shot at the stage, ranging from disbelief to disappointment. How did this earthling manage to survive the replication? Not even Moviard would dare going through any of the rings with his full body. Bronze medially questioned while squeezing one of her fists in anger. It is confusing to me as well. He should have been ripped to pieces the moment he went through. This earthing, how? The male draconet beside her also voiced out his confusion. Indrik Oslov, Planet Earth, wins, 1100 points attained, that useless little thing. Captain Strum cursed as he stared at the screens that displayed the loss of the draconets. Chatter, 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 chatter. The entire arena had descended into noise at the moment. Cheers as well as exclamations of awe reverberated across the place. Other battles in this batch were still ongoing, but the one between Indrik and Moviard had completely captivated them. Everyone believed this to be the most intense battle since the start of the Battle versus Challenge. The participants considered to be the most powerful in ISOP had only just began challenging themselves, so a battle on this level of destructiveness was the first of its kind since. The spectators were fired up, expecting more battles like this to happen soon, while Earth was elated and ecstatic. Every Earthling that witnessed that battle initially had the impression that Indrik might lose, since Moviard was not a weak opponent in the slightest. Now that things had gone this way, their morale had been boosted. Indrik was no doubt one of the most spectacular participants representing Earth. Good job, little man. EE wrapped his arm around Indrik's neck as he arrived before them. There were blood stains on different parts of Indrik's body. EE didn't mind getting stained. Everyone congratulated Indrik on a good job except Gustav and Yuhiko. Yuhiko couldn't even go near him for obvious reasons. Indrik stared forward to see Gustav gesturing at him to come over. He slowly made his way out of the encirclement of the group and arrived before Gustav. Big brother? Indrik muttered with a nervous expression while looming down. Good job. Made me proud, Gustav voiced with a warm tone while stretching his hand forward to fondle Indrik's curly hair. A smile instantly appeared on Indrik's face as tears brimmed in his eyes. Thank you, big brother. Thank you. Indrik rubbed his eyes with his sleeves while voicing out. For others, this was a confusing scenario, but only those who knew Gustav and Indrik well along with their backstory understood. Indrik felt the weight of heavy load lifted off his chest as he finally looked up at his big brother's face. He finally completely acknowledges me as his little brother. Indrik could tell that Gustav had truly forgiven him now, and it was a great feeling for him. He felt all his hard work to prove himself had paid off. Chapter 1254. Yuhiko, the actress S. Indrik, could tell that Gustav had truly forgiven him now, and it was a great feeling for him. He felt all his hard work to prove himself had paid off. The battles continued, and soon the batch ended. Indrik and Moviard's battle, along with 4 others, had been the highlight of this batch. To say the spectators were stunned would be an understatement. Things were getting more interesting as weaker planets lost all of their points and got automatically disqualified. Soon the planets challenging weaker ones to easily gain points would be unable to do so anymore once every single one of them was gone. Yuhiko, are you ready? Gustav voiced while approaching the black-haired beauty with a doll-like face. Huh? What do you mean? Yuhiko questioned with an expression of confoundment. We've lost 1200 points from declining the other challenges after our 3 tries, Gustav voiced. Yuhiko nodded while maintaining an expression of intrigue, wondering where Gustav was going with this. It's time to regain everything and add a little more to that, Gustav added. Huh? How? What do you mean? Yuhiko stuttered. Gustav stood before her and gave her a small finger twack on her forehead. You're going next, dummy, he voiced. Yuhiko looked up at the screens displaying the 150 participants selected for the next batch. I am not amongst, she voiced with confusion still. Yes, but one of these participants are going to challenge you, and it's going to be someone with a high number of points, Gustav responded. Are you saying I should accept a challenge? Yuhiko's eyes widened with an expression of surprise. Yes, don't be slow, Gustav responded. But I thought... Yuhiko still couldn't hide the look of surprise on her face. Whatever you thought was wrong. I was letting everyone bear a stereotypical thought about you in their minds. It's gonna pay off now. A smirk appeared on Gustav's face as he closed in further on Yuhiko. You go out there, take them by surprise and win. After voicing this out, Gustav turned around and moved back to his initial spot. Yuhiko's body trembled slightly in both excitement and anticipation as she stared in Gustav's expression. I was wrong. He only did this to make everyone have a wrong assumption, so it would be easier for me to win when I finally accept a challenge. Yuhiko came to this realization and her body trembled even more. What a cunning young man. As the next batch participants began making their way to the various stages, different discussions had broken out amongst the spectators area. Captain Vilax is a part of this batch. The last 2 times he absolutely destroyed his opponents. Istrin is part of this batch as well. I see Vesks as well. This batch is going to be intense as well. The spectators could recognize multiple participants representing planets that were in the 30 and 20. Yuhiko was a little intimidated after noticing the lineup. She wondered if could truly defeat any of these participants, but she maintained a focused expression. About 2 minutes later, things went exactly as Gustav had predicted. That Earth participant replacement has been challenged again. What is the point? She is just going to decline again. Earth sure has a lot of points to spare. What a disgrace. While everyone was expressing their opinions of ridicule, Yuhiko stared at the light panel before her, which of course showed decline and accept. She turned to stare at Gustav by the side, who nodded at her. Yuhiko proceeded to accept in the next moment. Yuhiko of planet Earth has accepted Vesks of Oxlurk challenge, Wawa. The spectators, including that of Earth's, exclaimed with looks of surprise. She accepted? I thought she was just a stand-in? What is going on? Yuhiko's acceptance had definitely shocked everyone, including the participants on their various stages at the moment. Some of them wished they had sent a challenge first, since they saw Yuhiko as an easy participant to get points from. Captain Vilax stared at the panel before him that displayed Earth. Looks like I was too slow, he internally regretted before deciding to challenge another planet. Yuhiko approached the stage that was filled with water. It was like a small stream, since the surface of the body of water was lower than their knees. All around them were small rocks protruding out of the water and a few floating in midair. Her opponent stood on one of the floating rocks and stared down at her as she walked into the stage. Vesks was an Oxlurkic representing planet Oxlurk. Just like the usual Oxlurkics, he had a cone-shaped upper body with long arms nearly reaching his feet and a head-sized hole on his chest. Its head was faceless yet, but when it was about to speak, a mouth-shaped hole appeared in the middle of its faceless head. You weren't my target, but since you're easier to deal with, I picked you, Vesks stated with a monotonous voice. Please take it easy on me. Yuhiko played the part by responding with a pleading and gentle voice. All right, I'll take it easy on you, he said before jumping down. Splash. Thank you. What a pretty creature, Yuhiko voiced with a seductive tone. You think him pretty? Vesks asked with a slightly intrigued tone. Hi, of course. Just take it easy on me, please. I know you're powerful, Yuhiko said while blushing. Ahem. Yes, I. While Vesks was responding with a rather shy tone, Vesks Drupit, Planet Oxlurk, versus Yuhiko Grande, Planet Earth. THS moment this appeared on the screens above. Yuhiko's shy expression and smile vanished as she kicked up water with her feet. Thria, this splash of water instantly transformed into golden spikes that shot forward with intensity in Vesk's direction. This sudden attack took everyone by surprise, Vesks included. He quickly tried to move aside to evade them, but he couldn't get away fast enough to dodge all of the golden spikes. Just as one was a couple feet away from contact, the hole in Vesk's chest suddenly lit up with a bright red color. Thawing, a red beam shot forward with intensity in the next instant, incineration the golden spike and blasting a hole through some rocks up ahead. Yuhiko had already moved the moment she initiated her first attack, so at the moment she was 10 feet away from Vesks as she approached from the right. Vesks turned to face her as the beam in the middle of his chest began building up power again. You stupid bitch. You played me. At this same moment, he noticed that Yuhiko had a handful of nuts in her grasp, which made him a little confused. In the next instant, he finally understood what Yuhiko's abilities were as his mouth widened in shock. Yuhiko had thrown out the multiple nuts in her grasp, and the moment she did, they transformed into gigantic rocks. Rocks began raining down from the air, causing Vesks to focus on evasion again. Bang, 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 bang. Large amount of waves splattered in every direction as the rocks crashed onto the body of water one after the other. Yuhiko didn't stop there. She flung out more nuts which increased in size, turning into rocks that were hundreds of feet large and speeding forward with intensity. Not only were rocks raining from the air, they were also speeding forward at Vesks who had no other option but to do his best in evading. Damn it! Transmutation. She is not as weak as I thought. Vesks cursed internally as he leapt sideways to dodge another raining rock. Thuum, he fired a beam at another rock that was close to making contact. Boom. He proceeded to jump through the hole he created in the rock only to meet another up front. Boom, boom, bang, bang, bang. For the next 5 minutes Vesks was unable to do any other thing rather than evasion and attacking the rocks that were turned into projectiles. From the Earth spectators area, Gustav watched with a look of satisfaction. Yuhiko is only a kilo ranked but her bloodline raises her potential to a higher level. Gustav wasn't surprised that this was the case. Her bloodline is like an upgrade of Amy's. The system chipped in. If anyone was to ask who was stronger between the two, he would say Vesks. However, he would mention that Yuhiko was more powerful overall due to the abilities that her bloodline granted her. She had come far from the time she nearly crushed him to death. Gustav could see that she was capable of applying her bloodline in different ways now. On the stage, Vesks had closed in on Yuhiko because she ran out of nuts. He lunged forward at her while she was trying to get some more things to hurl from her storage device. The water surrounding them suddenly turned into mud and Vesks found himself sinking. Yuhiko's standing point in the water turned solid and lifted her in the air like an elevator. An NGHH? Vesks looked up and noticed another massive rock dropping from the sky. Follow current novels on Top Novel Fool. Calm. Chapter 1255 in NGHH. Vesks looked up and noticed another massive rock dropping from the sky. Red beams suddenly shot out from the soles of his feet, freeing him from the muddy terrain. The incoming rock was close to colliding with his skull when his left arm lengthened, shooting towards a nearby floating piece of rock. Twayai, the moment the lengthened hand clutched the rock firmly, it pulled his entire figure away. Bang! He narrowly managed to escape getting crushed as he climbed onto the floating piece of rock he used to save himself. The moment Vesks got away, rays of light began to gather within the hole on his chest. I'll just destroy everything in range then. This thought appeared in his mind as the air began to vibrate. On another battle stage, two figures clashed repeatedly. One of them had a brownish insect-like face with long antennas and intense green eyes positioned at the top of the two antennas. His flowing silky green robes flapped loudly as his body blurred repeatedly while he clashed with his opponent. His opponent, on the other hand, was a white-skinned being with thick gator-like tail that was over 12 feet long. He had two eyeballs positioned at the front and back of his face with a humanoid-like body structure. These two were the Ozius and Singstro captains. Captain Vilax had challenged Doxta 20 minutes ago, and the latter accepted his challenge. The battle seemed quite intense as both figures turned to blurs that appeared all across the stage constantly. Bang! Their fists clashed once more in the middle of the ring, causing a wave of strong winds to spread in every direction. Both figures separate after the clash, landing hundreds of feet away from each other. The brownish aura-like energy surrounding Captain Vilax's figure intensified as he spoke. You are really good, but how long can you go before making use of an ability? As long as possible. I'll never let you successfully imprint. Captain Doxta responded with his back eyes squinting. Are you sure about that? You'll lose if you don't use your abilities, Captain Vilax warned. I think I'm doing just fine, Captain Doxta responded before straightening his hands and charging forward once more. Captain Vilax met his attacks with equal force, pushing his insect-like arms forward as they clashed repeatedly once more. Captain Doxta is really playing it safe. But can he really keep going this way without using an ability? Captain Vilax can't defeat him either. This is one hell of a stalemate. Spectators also had their eyes on the battle of Captain Doxta and Vilax, which currently looked like they were on the same level. Bang! 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 They clashed repeatedly for the next few minutes, but Captain Doxta was starting to get worried the more they clashed. The brownish aura surrounding Captain Vilax was increasing as the battle went on, and Tbees was quite worrisome. He hasn't imprinted yet. How does it keep climbing? Captain Doxta wondered, but after some time he understood why. Captain Doxta began to spot weird markings on his hands the more he clashed with Captain Vilax. Fly. He suddenly distanced himself from Captain Vilax, jumping back multiple times. Captain Vilax's green eyes darted in his direction before he turned into a blur once more. Threery. He swung his fingers at Captain Doxta repeatedly, who reacted by swerving sideways to evade. Captain Doxta did his best to avoid making contact with Vilax as he kept moving backwards while evading. You've noticed, haven't you? Captain Vilax questioned with a tone of intimidation while still sending out a flurry of attacks. How did you manage to? Captain Doxta voiced while pushing his neck to the side, barely managing to evade one of Captain Vilax's thrusts. It doesn't matter. So long as I don't make contact with you, it should be okay. Captain Doxta leapt across the air in the next instant. As his body ascended, so did Captain Vilax's, giving him not a second of breathing space. How long do you think you'll be able to keep evading? Captain Vilax voiced while chasing after him. How long do you think you'll be able to keep attacking? Captain Doxta shot back. I guess we shall see. The brownish aura covering Captain Vilax's body spiked again. As the battle continued, Captain Doxta realized that he couldn't keep evading and swung his tail at a tree behind. The moment his tail completely wrapped around the tree, he yanked it off the ground and flung it in Captain Vilax's direction. Bang! I think you should take a look at with a double spin while flying across the air. Captain Vilax swung his foot at the tree, instantly causing it to split in two. Why, that wasn't the end of it, as 10 more trees were flung out simultaneously, which Captain Vilax either evaded or cleaved in half. They'll activate it for a split second and attack him before he realizes what is happening, Captain Doxta said internally as he sped towards the left while his eyes emitted blue glows. Circular blue energy swirled around his arms as he raised them, pointing his fingers in Captain Vilax's direction while Vilax was thwarting the trees shooting at him. Glowing blue firearms materialized in Doxta's grasp, which he joined together swiftly to produce something even larger resembling a massive gun. Boom! He fired it instantly at Vilax, who had only just noticed the powerful force of disintegrating blue beam when it was inches from his face. At this same moment, the brownish aura surrounded Vilax climbed intensely, blanketing the entirety of the stage while the beam made contact with his face. Wah! Loud voices of disbelief rang out as the spectators watching this battle witnessed a shocking scenario. On Yuhiko's side of the stage, havoc and destruction had surrounded the entirety of the stage. Red circular glowing energies floating in different locations were sending forth charges one after the other that caused everything in view to disintegrate. The body of water below evaporated, turning to steam as the rocks floating in mid-air crumbled to dust as well. After a minute, all that could be seen around was an empty vicinity with a completely charred ground that had gotten leveled. On a part of this ground, a pod-like cover extending from the ground split in two and a girl with a slightly darkened body fell out of it. Kur. She coughed profusely as a figure landed before her. Twack! An intense kick sent her flying after this figure mercilessly swung his foot at her. Yuhiko's eyes watered due to the hotness of the environment as her figure flew across the air. Bam! 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 Her body ricocheted across the ground as Vesks leapt into the air and landed on her body. She was completely pinned to the ground in the next instant as Vesks began to rain fists on her face. You dare fool me? Bang! Guess who is pretty now? Bang! Not you, bang. He'll mess up that human face of yours. Bang. Oh, he must have really gotten triggered about getting called pretty. As far as male Oxlurkic beauty standards go, he's ugly. That is why he must be so triggered. Welp, that Earth girl is losing now even though she was pretty good. The spectators watching this part of the battle stage all concluded on Yuhiko's loss as she continued to take a beating. Wait, Yuhiko suddenly voiced out, causing Vesks to pause. He subconsciously held on for an instant with one of his fists a few inches from her face. "You are actually pretty," she voiced while spitting out blood. "Don't try to fool me again," he voiced while arching his arm back once more. "I'm serious, you're pretty." Yuhiko breathed in and out profusely as she voiced, causing Vesks to pause again. "Pretty stupid." Yuhiko adding this to the mix caused Vesk's face to scrunch up as he yelled out and threw his fist forward. "You bit." Before he could complete his action, he felt a chill within his body, and in the next instant the world around him tumbled. "War of Ugling Ian." His voice trailed away as his speech pattern became unrecognizable. "Wah, chatter, chatter, chatter." Exclamations and expressions of shock could be seen on the faces of the spectators as THSY stared at the screens. Vesk's body had fallen to the ground like a piece of inflated rubber. It seemed like his internal skeletal system suddenly disappeared as he found himself unable to move or even speak up. Yuhiko's left hand could be seen clutching his left foot, and spotting this brought a look of realization to the faces of the spectators. "You made the mistake of thinking I'm only capable of turning non-living matter to what I desire," Yuhiko voiced as she stood to her feet and cleaned her bloody mouth. Chapter 1256 Ozius Captain is also a force to reckon with. You made the mistake of thinking I'm only capable of turning non-living matter to what I desire, Yuhiko voiced as she stood to her feet and cleaned her bloody mouth. Her transmutation ability is able to affect living tissue as well? This is inconceivable. The crowd went bonkers once more. She practically has my flesh-warping ability. Gustav nodded in approval after witnessing this. He was also unaware that Yuhiko abilities had graduated from non-living to loving matter. It was truly a powerful upgrade. But she is about to pass out. It took all of her energy to achieve that, the system voiced internally. She is really a great actress. No one is aware. A smirk appeared on Gustav's face. Yuhiko Grande, Planet Earthwinds, squinting eyes face, 1600 points attained. Yuhiko maintained a seductive smile on her face as she moved forward. After pinning her to the ground, Vesks had let his guard down. Yuhiko did her best to twist her hand while underneath his weight so she could grab any part of his body. Underneath the barrages of blows, she successfully made contact with Vesk's leg, but he was still unaware, and even if he knew, he wouldn't have thought much of this. It took a massive chunk of her bloodline energy to successfully dissolve the skeletal system of Vesks, but fortunately she managed to pull it off. Swoosh, Gustav vanished from his standing point and reappeared before Yuhiko just as she got out of the stage. Plop. Yuhiko fell forward weakly, and he proceeded to grab her. Swoosh, he vanished again and reappeared at his initial standing point. He slowly helped Yuhiko take a seat, and Angie passed an energy recovery pill to him from the side, which he fed to her. "Why?" she muttered weakly. Gustav voiced while squatting. "I was among the many who made you miserable. I thought this was another revenge setup, but it wasn't. You even helped me win," she questioned with a confused tone. "I'm past the point in my life where I act like a bully to deal with bullies. Besides, I already dealt with you enough. I have more important things to set my sights on than becoming a bully." Gustav chuckled lightly before getting back up. He was never the type to not get revenge, but he already did that, so he didn't see the point in keeping it up, especially when other things were at stake here. Yuhiko stared at Gustav with an unfathomable expression. His glow is too bright. He's like the sun. Some of the spectators were still talking about the battle that had just ended between Yuhiko and Vesks, but another intense battle in one of the stages had caught their attention. Gustav also took note of this battle with God eyes. Battling the Ozius will definitely be a problem with their imprinting ability. He watched as Ozius Captain battled against Singstro Captain. The tide of the battle had shifted in favor of Captain Vilax due to Doxta's previous actions. If he was faster, maybe he would have been able to pull the attack off, but now there's no way out for Doxta, Gustav thought as he watched the ongoing battle. The entire stage was bathed in a brownish glow, emitting from the body of Captain Vilax. Within the brownish world, a large blue beam floated right before the Ozius Captain. It seemed to be receding as black ink-like writings appeared within the beam, corrupting its entirety. The ripples in mid-air created from the force of THR beam began retracting as well. Hundreds of feet away, Captain Doxta stared with a look of horror. Damn it! How was he able to imprint on it so fast? Captain Doxta had attacked earlier with his ability after leaving Captain Vilax preoccupied by yanking a bunch of trees at him. He thought Captain Vilax would be unable to counter his attack on time, but at the last moment, Vilax did. As Captain Doxta stared at the beam, he fired, increasing in size by the moment he clenched his fist. I might as well not hold back anymore, he yelled as a bluish energy swirled around his entire figure. A transparent encasement of blue energy surrounded his entire being and formed a giant bot of sorts. He floated within this transparent mass of energy, and giant muzzle-shaped weapons began protruding from different parts of this giant bot. Boom! He fired a destructive shot at Captain Vilax, who was floating in mid-air. The bluish glowing projectile caused ripples of wind to spread across the vicinity, but in the next moment, it slowed down after closing in on Captain Vilax. The beam came to a stop before Captain Vilax, and the same situation with the other attack played out again. Ink-like letters began spreading within the beam. Captain Doxta gritted his teeth as he began to continuously fire. Bang! 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 Boom! 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 The ground caved in from the firepower this suit of energy was emitting. Debris had spread across the entire vicinity, and the barrier trembled repeatedly, yet Captain Doxta did not stop firing. Bang! Boom! 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 He's trying to overload him. Gustav understood what Captain Doxta was playing at. How will throwing more attacks help? Rhea had a confused expression as he questioned. If Vilax loses focus for even a moment, one of the attacks could hit and the imprint would go bad, triggering an explosion that would fry him, Gustav responded. Oh! Rhea had a look of understanding upon hearing this. Hundreds of massive blue beams had surrounded Captain Vilax at this point. No matter how much Captain Doxta fired, the projectiles never truly reached Vilax. Exo double. The energy swirling around Captain Doxta suddenly doubled upon voicing this out. The air trembled intensely as energy began building up in waves, causing the surroundings to vibrate as well. The suit of energy surrounding Captain Doxta increased in size tremendously as a cannon-like muzzle appeared in the middle of its chest area. A purplish energy began swirling at its tip as the air continued vibrating intensely. The swirling circular purplish energy reached the size of 3 boulders before firing at Captain Vilax. Thuum! The spectator's eyes widened as the circular purplish energy shot across the air and suddenly exploded before it reached Captain Vilax. Boom! The entire stage was engulfed in a wave of purple as destructive ripples blasted across the vicinity. The grounds crumbled and the trees around were instantly incinerated as the waves slammed into the barrier surrounding the stage, rocking it intensely. It looked like everything had been destroyed as both captains were consumed in the wake of the blast. Chatter! 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 The crowd was going bonkers once more. Did he make it explode before it got to Captain Vilax so Vilax wouldn't be able to imprint on it? Rhea asked with a look of contemplation. You're finally getting a little smarter, Timmy voiced in response, which practically gave Rhea the answer to his question. That was a really smart move from Doxta, but unfortunately, Eldris shook his head from the side, causing Rhea to stare at the screens with an intrigued expression. As the purplish wave of destruction calmed, a figure could be seen floating in the mid-air with a brownish glow surrounding him. A small circular purple glow could be seen floating above his insect-like hands along with multiple other bluish beams. Fortunately for me, and quite unfortunately for you, explosion still carries residue energy from your attack which I can still imprint on, Captain Vilax voiced at the whitish figure, who was hundreds of feet away, let out heavy breaths. No way, Captain Doxta said with a horrified expression. Captain Vilax raised his insect-like hands, causing the circular purplish energy floating above to rise. It began increasing in size rapidly along with the other bluish beams floating around in the vicinity. The purplish glowing circular energy soon became the same size with the attack Captain Doxta had initiated earlier. Captain Doxta activated his abilities again and leapt forward, not willing to accept defeat. This is the end for you, Captain Vilax said before swinging his arms downwards. Fwye. Fwye. fly, 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 fly. Streaks of massive blue energies shot down at intense speeds simultaneously while Captain Doxta tried to erect a barrier of blue energy around him in the last second. Boom, 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 boom. Heavy explosions rang out in the next moment, wreaking havoc across the already desecrated vicinity. To top it off, Captain Vilax dropped the massive purplish ball of energy last, inciting the final explosion. Boom. The first layer of the barrier surrounding the stage shattered as the entire stage got covered in a world of purple even more destructive than the first. He has won, Rhea voiced while the explosions were still going off. Ozius Captain is also a force to reckon with, Ildris stated. Follow current novels on Top Novel Fool. Com. Chapter 1257, Ozius Captain is also a force to reckon with, Ildris stated. Everyone was well aware of the abilities of the Ozius by now. The one they were mostly known for was their imprinting ability. The moment they managed to imprint on any energy successfully, that energy would become theirs. They would be able to manipulate the energy as they wished afterwards. Roalpha Pi D Alphes Nu Omicron V Epsilon Elm. This was why Captain Doxta only initiated melee attacks at first. He was trying to make sure Captain Vilax didn't successfully imprint on the energy of his attacks. Captain Vilax's speed of imprinting had shocked the entire crowd of spectators since some of Captain Doxta attacks should have hit before he successfully imprinted on them. Vilax Shafur, Planet Ozius, wins. 1,000 points attained. Chatter. 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 The two captains' battle had been quite intense and lasted longer than most of the fights. The crowd wasn't surprised at how long this took since it was a battle between two captains. After all, they were captains for a reason. After the destruction on the stage calmed, Captain Doxta's unconscious and battered body could be seen laying in the crater that the stage had been turned into. The battle had ended in loss for Planet Singstro. The spectators continued to watch the battles unfold in this batch. At this moment, only a few others were left before the batch would come to an end. Another intense battle was playing out between two participants, and one of them happened to be a Draconet. The Draconet had been challenged by the other participant, and from the looks of things, the challenger was losing. Gustav, of course, kept gathering information and insight as he watched the ongoing battles on every stage. He turned to stare in the direction of the Drakons as he noticed something. Looks like he's not out of the woods. Indrik did quite the number on him, Gustav said internally as he noticed Moviard receiving treatment. Moviard happened to still be unconscious. At this moment, Gustav suddenly locked eyes with Captain Strum. Thrias, it was like streaks of electricity going off as an unfathomable pressure suddenly spread across the vicinity. The spectators and every of the participants felt the tension in the air like a physical presence as these two glared at each other intensely. No words were uttered, but they were both saying the same thing to each other with the gaze of intensity. Soon, with this, they both looked away at the same time, and tranquility soon returned to the vicinity. Gustav hadn't forgotten what Strum did to Falco and still partly blamed him for Falco's current state, while Captain Strum couldn't forget the humiliation he felt at the hands of Gustav. Their initial battle had been short-lived, but nothing was going to stop them from facing each other here. Time went by very quickly, and soon the third day of the Versus Battle Challenge arrived. During this time frame, every single participant had gotten the opportunity to be a part of the batch and choose their opponent at least twice. Gustav had won both his matches and didn't try to challenge Captain Strum yet. He had lesser points, so he was trying to gather enough to challenge without getting turned down. Captain Strum also hadn't challenged him yet as well for unknown reasons. Since the first challenge from Navira, no one had challenged Gustav. It was unknown if it was due to fear of losing or other reasons, but participants didn't try to challenge captains that led teams that were in the top 100. Gustav's battle with Navira just showed that the captains were in a different league entirely, especially since Gustav beat Navira while barely making use of any abilities. Gustav had amassed around 3,000 points extra from the 3 battles he had won so far. Today was the day of disqualification, and every planetary group were doing their best to amass as much points as they could before the disqualification period arrived. Chapter 1258 Mass Disqualification Decline. Gustav repeated himself. But I can win this guy, Timmy said with a tone of indignation. I already even beat him and his group, Timmy added. You had my help, Glade chimed in. Still, I'd definitely win, Timmy voiced. Decline. Gustav shook his head. Timmy was about to retort again when Eldris held his shoulder from the side, while shaking his head. You should know by now that every decision Gustavs make has a reason behind it. You may not be aware of the reason, but you should know that whatever it is, it's definitely a solid reason, Eldris chided. After hearing this, Timmy decided to back down. All right then, he sighed before declining the challenge. Wawa chatter. 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 Dash, did he just decline the challenge? Dash, I thought that Timmy guy was one of the strongest on Earth's team. Dash, if that is so, why would he decline? Dash, planet Zionci is strong, but they are not close to Earth's level. Dash, then why would he decline? The spectators and reporters discussed about the reasons why Timmy could have declined, but they couldn't figure it out. Only Gustav knew why he told Timmy to decline, and he didn't want the others to know. Gustav recalled the incident with Axeler. A Zionci elder was leaving after concluding transaction with Axeler the moment they arrived. Gustav didn't know exactly what the Zionci elder purchased from Axeler, but he was leaning on it being an item that would boost the strength of the Zioncis in this battle challenge. The Zioncis have performed pretty good so far, so Gustav's suspicion was even higher. If they still bore a grudge on Timmy for defeating them in the Vinder Egg Challenge, there was no doubt that they wanted to use a win to redeem themselves. A lot of planets under the Alliance had massive egos after all. Gustav didn't want to risk it, so he had Timmy decline. Axeler was no longer on the planet, so Gustav was sure that no one would be able to acquire his services in the future. If they were to meet in future challenges, Gustav wouldn't mind if Timmy chose to battle them, but for the current challenge, he wouldn't allow it. Damn it, that little vermin declined. Orimon cursed as he played with the trinket on his finger. He'll challenge the other one then, he decided before picking Earth again. On the Earth's participant area, everyone stared at a particular person as they noticed the same challenger had picked their planet again. Why is this dude so obsessed with us? Fildhor's face scrunched up as he voiced out. He definitely has a bone to pick with us. Timmy shook his head. Considering we've had a few run-ins with them and they've been on the losing end each time. It kinda makes sense, Matilda chimed in. Should I accept? Glade turned to Gustav while questioning. Decline. Gustav shook his head. Apparently, Glade had been challenged this time. Gustav's suspicion had already increased at this point. Usually other participants would pick a different planet and opponent altogether after anyone declines that challenge request. Yet Orimon challenged yet another participant from Earth. Glade wasted no time in declining after Gustav told her to. Under normal circumstances, there was no doubt that these two could defeat Orimon, but Gustav was skeptical this one time, and for good reasons. Damn it. I should have gathered enough points before challenging any of them. Orimon had a look of frustration after the second decline. He didn't challenge any of them since because he had way lesser points, but as the challenge continued, he accumulated points. However, they also accumulated more points during the challenge, so despite increasing the number of points he had, he still couldn't meet up. He thought they'd at least accept his challenge since both of them were sure they could defeat him. Unfortunately, things didn't turn out as he expected. Orimon went on to pick a different planet to challenge, knowing he had lost both targets. If anyone from Zionci challenge any of you in the future batches, decline, Gustav voiced out. We should? Timmy asked with a confused expression. Yeah. Gustav decided he was going to be the only one who would accept their challenges moving forward. That was only if they challenged him instead of the others. The group nodded in understanding despite wanting Gustav to explain his decision. Knowing Gustav, they didn't push it since he tended to keep things to himself. The batch continued and Orimon battled a considerably weaker opponent, which of course brought him victory. Gustav didn't notice anything off with the battle, but he still stuck to his decision. As the batches continued, Angie, Finks, and Abyssos had another turn before the day finally came to an end. After the 112th batch, the computerized systems didn't pick the next batch of participants. Everyone could see the podium where the handler was standing slowly rise above the ground. At this point, Only around 1,500 planets had not completely depleted their points and gotten disqualified along the way. However, it was now time to tell whether or not these planets had enough points to continue participating in this challenge or not. Tension permeated the entire arena as many participants hoped and prayed that their efforts wouldn't be in vain. While a lot of them were worried, planets that already had a high number of total points were unbothered. It is time. I will now be revealing the required number of points accumulated to remain in the challenge. As mentioned earlier, planets who fail to reach the required number will be immediately disqualified from ISOP, Handler 1 voiced out. Will be fine. It's just 10,000 points. We have enough, some participants whispered to themselves with looks of relief. The required number of points to remain in the challenge is 17,000, Handler 1 announced with a loud voice. Gasp! What chatter? Chatter, the entire arena erupted with noise after the revelation that left a lot of participants with looks of disbelief and hanging jaws. What? How the hell is it 17,000 points? This cannot be. The collector told us we needed to have only 10,000. Shit, we got wrong information. We only accumulated 15,000. Damn it, we have only 11,000. Captain, I thought you said we'll be fine? Many planetary group broke out in lamentations as they stared at the screens above which displayed lists of the planets who accumulated enough points. A lot of them could see that their planet names were missing from the list, but this was to be expected since they didn't accumulate enough. That darn collector. A lot of them were cursing the same person internally. It was the person they had bought information from. How come the collector said 10,000? Orimon questioned the Zionsi captain. Who knows? Probably an error. It doesn't matter to us. We have enough points, Captain Alumo voiced while staring at a part of the scoreboard. Planet Zionsi, 31,000 points. He could see that they had climbed the ranks and reached 221. Zing, 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 zing. Participants began vanishing very quickly from the arena. These were obviously the disqualified planets who didn't meet the quota. Gustav could hear all of the rookas around him, and he knew a good chunk of the complaints were from those who bought information from Axeler. The misinformation had played a role in causing their disqualification since Axeler gave them a number that was 7,000 lesser than the actual number of points. A smirk appeared on his face as he looked up at the scoreboard. Earth was still in first position despite not being the planet that accumulated the most points during this challenge. Planet Earth, 76,201 points. Planet Draconet, 61,900 points. Planet Osis, 59,400 points. Planet Indulus Prime, 57,000 points. Planet Oxlurk, 55,300 points. Planet Tribtes, 54,900 points. Planet Diov, 54,000 points. Planet Hixto, 53,500 points. Planet Osiris, 53,400 points. Planet Zillion, 52,000 points. Planet Claxosape, 51,900 points. Planet Orion, 50,100 points. Planet Gundabalt, 48,000 points. The Big Three position remain unaffected. Indulus Prime is coming real close to that third spot. So many groups didn't get up to 17,000 points. The spectators were astonished at the current situation. Close to 1,000 planets had gotten disqualified. Only 572 planets were left in the competition. ISOP started with nearly 3,000 planets, and now it was down to nearly a quarter of that. The competition was slowly coming to an end, yet things were only going to get more intense from henceforth. The participants' area now had way lesser numbers than before, making it look a bit scanty. However, there were still over 11,000 participants left. This wasn't a small number, but compared to the 60,000 participants that ISOP began with, it was a considerably lesser number. The battle challenge shall resume tomorrow, and by the end of the challenge, there will be another disqualification round, Handler 1 revealed. Follow current novels on Top Novel Fool. Com. Chapter 1259, The Battle Challenge shall resume tomorrow, and by the end of the challenge, there will be another disqualification round, Handler 1 revealed. A higher number of points will be required to carry on to the next challenge? Teamy voiced out. Most likely, Eldris responded with a contemplative expression. Another round of loud chatters reverberated across the arena as the spectators guessed amongst themselves how many points will be required at the end of the battle challenge. Gustav reckoned that only a few planets who had bought information from Axelar were left. It was uncertain if they bought even more future information. Gustav wondered if they'd still be willing to believe Axelar if they did. The Diaperonians was amongst those who were disqualified this night. Gustav clicked his tongue in pity as he remembered them. They had gone through extreme measures to further their rise in Aesop only to get disqualified here. The Diaperonians initially had enough points to escape disqualification, but some of their representatives lost a couple of times during the Versus Challenge, causing their points to dwindle. Let's head back, E voiced as the Versus Battle Challenge came to an end for the day. The coming days were about to get even more hectic since it was majorly stronger planets that remained. The group retired to their accommodation quarters along with other participants. Gustav excused himself from the group as they headed in and went in a different direction. Minutes later, Gustav and Stark could be seen strolling across a golden paved streets with natives of planet Ozius around them. Have you discovered anything yet? Gustav questioned. I tried. It's still the same, Stark responded with a slightly dispirited look. A dark fog still shrouds your vision of the interior of their quarters. Gustav looked like he wasn't convinced as he voiced out. Yes, Stark heaved a low sigh. I thought you said you could see everything? Gustav questioned with a look of disbelief. He recalled that Stark was even capable of seeing Miss Amy's real self hovering above the planet before anyone could. I can. It's not that I can't see the interior. It's more like the visibility within the interior is inexistent. Even if a person entered, they wouldn't be able to see anything because of the lack of visibility in the environment, Stark explained. But you can see in the dark. How is this any different? Gustav questioned. This is different because it is beyond darkness. It's beyond anything comprehensible. Light wouldn't even be able to infiltrate that room. It would be instantly vanquished. I would lose my sight even if I got in. Stark kept explaining with a visibly disturbed expression. It was obvious that this was something he had never experienced before. He didn't know this was possible. Could you force your all-seeing visuals to catch a glimpse of anything at all? Even the smallest detail would be appreciated, Gustav said with a tone of concern. This whole situation was getting more intense than he expected. I can try, but I can't guarantee anything. I will certainly give it my all tonight and let you know if I discover anything, Stark replied with a smile. I owe him my life. Stark still felt like he hadn't repaid Gustav, so he was willing to do whatever he could to help. Thank you, Stark, Gustav voiced with a tone of appreciation. Not a problem. If you don't mind me asking, why are you so concerned about them? Stark questioned. I do mind you asking, Gustav replied. Ow, Stark mouthed with a sour expression. After a few moments of silence, Gustav spoke. All I can say is, they MJGHD be connected to whatever is responsible for causing problems for a friend. I need to be sure before taking any action, Gustav expressed with a suspicious expression. Roelfa pi dialfes nu omicron v epsilon L. Si omicronim, you really do love your friends, Stark added. Don't be cringe. Gustav turned around while trying to maintain a cold look. Am I right? Or am I right? Hee hee. Stark teased from while Gustav sped away. Contact me if you discover anything. Gustav's voice echoed across the air despite being long gone. Stark stood in place for a few moments with a smile on his face till two figures appeared beside him. Family head, any word yet? One of the two cloaked figures questioned. I think you should take a look at Snovel. Siomicronim, he has only been gone for like 3 days. It's too early, pft, Stark responded with a light chuckle. Then, what business do you have with Gustav Crimson? The other one inquired. He needed a favor, Stark replied while strolling forward. Family head, I wouldn't advise being acquainted with someone like him. It would be trouble if he finds out our real purpose of coming here. The first one spoke again. Relax, Viltru. He isn't going to find out, especially since he has a lot on his plate and Axelar won't be meeting us on this planet after acquiring the item, Stark said with an unbothered tone. Family head should be aware that Gustav Crimson is one of the smartest MBO officers on the face of the earth despite his paltry sum of filed experiences. Viltru sounded with a tone of warning. On Earth, hee, not on Earth, right now, hee. Stark's face slowly went from chuckling to straight as he noticed their expressions didn't change. That was supposed to be a joke? Anyways, like I said, you worry too much. Besides, Gustav is a friend who has not only saved my life, but saved the family as well. HR is not someone I can ignore when he needs a favor, Stark reiterated with a firm tone. This young lad has accolades to his nom. Enough with the complaints. Let's go. Stark shut them both down and continued strolling forward. I have a job to do this night. Gustav had arrived back at the accommodation area minutes ago. He sat in place with a contemplative expression. For someone capable of seeing even Miss Amy when she didn't want to be spotted, it is inconceivable that Stark is unable to see the interior of their accommodation area. Gustav thought, are they using a power beyond that of Miss Amy? Indulus Prime are average on planetary strength under the Alliance. That doesn't make sense. Gustav's suspicions about Indulus Prime had festered since the start of the battle challenge. He had tried to spy on them, but God Eyes wasn't powerful enough to do the job. Gustav decided to contact someone who he thought had the capability to successfully spy on them, so he could gather a bit of information and increase chances of piecing things together. Unfortunately, even Stark's all-seeing eyes were unable to give imagery feedback of the happenings within Indulus Prime accommodation quarters. Beyond darkness? Gustav recalled Stark mentioning that even light would be instantly snuffed out if it tried to phase through their accommodation quarters. There was only one other person he recalled with dark abilities that had manifested something on that level. Falco. Gustav recalled the incident at Arabia City where Falco was supposedly transitioning. The thick darkness that had clouded the environment was so polluting that even a powerful mixed blood would not survive more than a second in there. The concept of light didn't exist within that vicinity, but he made use of perception to pinpoint Falco's presence within. To go through such measures, they must have something to hide. Gustav thought about how he could infiltrate if Stark ended up being unsuccessful. Falco could do it, the system suggested. No, not him. They'll find another way. Gustav immediately shut down the system's suggestion. There was no doubt that someone like Falco, who was an entity of darkness with a title Gustav didn't understand yet, would definitely be able to see in such a place, but Gustav wasn't willing to include Falco in his investigations, especially because of his current state. Also, they needed to be spied on, so Falco couldn't just walk into there like he owned the place or something. Watching them without their realization was the best way to finding out what they were hiding. I didn't count on Aesop be this complicated. Gustav wondered what would have happened if he had chosen not to attend Aesop. Gustav analyzed an idea in his head which he decided he would try if Stark failed to have any new information for him by tomorrow. What are you thinking about? E voiced as he walked into the main room. A lot, Gustav responded. I can tell. You've been more worked up since we arrived on this planet, E stated while taking a seat from across Gustav's position. Aesop is more than it seems on the surface. There's a lot going on. I only hope I can figure things out before it's too late. Gustav's brows furrowed as he voiced with a concerned tone. You need to relax, man. No matter what is going on under the surface, so long as we are all together in one piece, we can handle it, E said with a tone of encouragement. Update on the character illustrations. According to Webnovel, 5 character illustrations will be available on the front page before this month runs out. The first 5 characters who have been picked for proper illustration are Gustav, Angie, Miss Amy, EE, and Falco. The others will be available on a later date. Chapter 1260. No cowards, but what if we're not together or in one piece? Gustav didn't want to voice out his concerns and sound more troubled than he looked, so he only nodded in response. You're right. Gustav and E continued discussing for some time as E threw in occasional jokes to lighten the mood. Gustav couldn't help but chuckle a couple of times before he finally decided to retire to his room and channel his bloodline for the rest of the night. The next day arrived in a jiffy, and the Aesop participants were once more gathered in the arena. Cheers, cheers, cheers. Spectators cheers for their planet representatives to boost their morale as they stepped into the arena. Spectators from disqualified planets were allowed to remain present till the end of Aesop. Some of these spectators were still sour from their planets losing, but others had already gotten over it and picked new favorites to support. I will stake my bets on the Draconets. Not for me, I'll pick Osius. Captain Vilax is my current favorite. I'll place my bets today with logic instead of favoritism. If I see two participants paired and am sure one is more powerful than the other, I'm placing my bets today on the more powerful one. And with that kid from Earth Endrick. The arena was loud as usual before the computerized system began picking out participants for the next batch. SSS Fuhum. The circular beam flew off into the distance with the beast within, returning a bit of tranquility to the environment. Lucky, face displayed a relieved expression once more as he moved to the side and took a seat. On the other side, Gustav hugged Angie's body to his as he fully regained clarity. Thank you, he whispered. I'm glad you're all right, Angie voiced while rubbing his back affectionately. Gustav's face displayed a smile as he relaxed completely for a while, closing his eyes and soaking in the warmness of her body. After some time, he opened his eyes with a single thought in mind. What was that? He wondered for a couple of seconds as he tried to recall what could have brought about that. Fear. Even though I told the system to restrict itself and go offline, it shouldn't be a reason for me to develop such deep fear that would cause a panic attack, he thought. After thinking for a few more minutes, Gustav finally figured it out. The encounter with these beasts here and wearing himself out, his last thoughts before he entered the state of panic was powerlessness. While he hadn't noticed it, he subconsciously feared going back to being plain old Gustav with only the ability to change his hair color and a strong penchant for suicide. He thought he had forgotten the feeling of powerlessness. He was unaware that he had been cultivating the fear of going back to being the same weak and useless person he used to for years. An incident like this was the only thing needed to trigger the overwhelming fear of powerlessness that had been creeping from deep within. Internally, he was extremely grateful for Angie and EES' presence since he had no idea what he would have done if they weren't here. Less than 10,000 points. My life points have maxed out, voiced from the other end as he stared at his eye of bracelet. Gustav and Angie slowly separated from each other after hearing that. They each proceeded to check their eye of bracelets. Mine has maxed out too. Mine as well. Angie and Gustav noticed that the points displayed on their bracelets was neither decreasing nor was it increasing. Gustav calculated that this meant they had been in the golden entrapment yellow zone for over 2 hours. Although their life points had maxed out, they were still in a yellow zone. This meant they weren't completely safe even though they had found a place to hide out. This was precisely one of the things Handler 1 mentioned earlier. Yellow zones were not void of danger, but they were also not completely dangerous like red zones would be. Maybe more yellow zones like this existed where participants could find a place to hide out within. However, Gustav still felt they weren't completely safe and still needed to find a way to get to a green zone. This, of course, was easier said than done since the closest green zone was 5 hours away. They're still here, voiced as he peeked through the holes in between the golden gate-like poles. He could still visibly spot the purplish fog across the air and hear faint wings flapping sounds. The skeletal flying beasts were obviously still around here. They sure are persistent, Angie muttered. Gustav's main worry was them finding this place and attacking with a combined force. Although the last beast who tried attacking the gate-like poles was unable to break through, there was no telling if the same situation would repeat itself in an event where multiple of them attacked at once. Not to mention that the small space they were currently hiding in had stopped moving in the meantime. The entire golden entrapment was in a constant state of change, but there were times when certain areas would remain unmoved for minutes or even hours. We need to find a way to sneak out, Gustav voiced. In another part of the Beast Haven, a participant with multiple limbs and bluish star-shaped patterns all across his body bolted across a dark vicinity with intense speed. Treach. Puchii. The sound of organs ripping and body parts splitting reverberated across the environment as this participant stabbed his multiple limbs into the bodies of menacingly large beasts. He arrived before one that was over 30 feet tall, throwing a fierce uppercut with 3 of his right arms. Boom. His entire body traveled upwards in speed with his arms bursting through the head of the creature instantaneously, leaving a large enough hole for him to fly through. 4 seconds. 3 seconds. Fountain of blood and brain matter splattered across the place as a timer counted down on this particular eye of bracelet. A large shadowy figure reaching over 100 feet in height suddenly appeared behind him as he raised one of his left hands. The large shadowy figure conjured a massive bluish glowing spear in the last 2 seconds, before passing it to the figure with multiple limbs. Omicron, the participant, held onto the 30-feet-long glowing blue spear with 3 of its hands at once before flinging it forward with intense force. Thum! A shockwave spread from his location, sending a ripple of dust across the vicinity as the bluish spear shot out with immense speed. It phased through a lineup of beasts up ahead, causing them to disintegrate into blue light particles instantly. The spear made a C-turn after reaching a particular distance, stabbing into the rest of the beasts in the vicinity. 1 second, 0 second. In the next instant, the glowing spear vanished along with the dark shadowy figure hovering over the participant initially. The participant raised his arms slightly as he felt power leave his body. 10 seconds was enough, he voiced with a tone laced with pride while staring at the corpses that drenched the surface of this environment. He turned around and moved towards a small black crate up ahead. The instant arrived before it, he placed his left arm into it. Thry! A computerized sound rang out before he withdrew his hand. Attacks restocked, +1 extra attack. His multiple eyes had displayed hints of astonishment and excitement as he noticed the notification on his eye of bracelet. Things are about to get more interesting. Unlike these unworthy weaklings, I, the captain of the Draconids, shall not cower in the face of any adversity, even powerlessness. I shall bring the Beast Haven to its knees, Captain Strum stated with a short burst of laughter while turning around. He tapped on the map display on his eye of bracelet. Scarlet Canyon, the location that was displayed on the map as his current position, showed that he was in a red zone. What he had come here for was unknown. However, what was known was how he had slaughtered over 200 beasts here since his arrival. Is this to say that he still had his supernatural abilities? No, that wasn't the case. Captain Strum had made use of 2 of his attacks before his arrival here. His last attack just happened to be one that displayed unlocking participant abilities for 10 seconds. He was allowed to use his supernatural abilities for 10 seconds due to this, and that was enough to lay waste to the entire region. He only came here to restock in the first place, ignoring that it would be packed with all sort of dangerous beasts. It was like Captain Strum was without fear or restraint despite losing the teammates who were initially around him earlier. Now that he had achieved his objective, he began making his way to the closest yellow zone. Now he had 4 attacks instead of 3 after restocking. Time went by very quickly, 23:45. 10, less than a day was left till the end of the Beast Haven Survival Challenge currently. At this point, over half of the participants had been disqualified. From the initial numbers of nearly 2,000, only a little over 600 were left. The challenge was filled with unexpected situations, and despite the participants receiving briefing before going in, it ended up being more crazy than anticipated. Some that had survived so far were lucky, since despite being capable, some participants had gotten disqualified due to unfortunate situations. Currently, many participants were unaware of one thing as they held on to whatever was left of their attacks as a last resort. TH's last attack in the Eye of Bracelet wasn't an attack. Instead, it was a 10 seconds temporary unlock of the restraints on their supernatural abilities. Those who has already made use of all their attacks were aware of these, but many others still held on to their last attack, not wishing to make use of it until they were in an inescapable situation. They were certainly in for a shock if they ever made use of it. Only Captain Strum was crazy enough to head to a red zone, so he was the only participant who would get the chance to unlock the restraints on his supernatural abilities twice. Follow current novels on Top Novel Fool. Com. Chapter 1261, Captain Kriv vs. Gustav, Kriv VL, Planet Klaxosape, vs. Gustav Crimson, Planet Earth. Captain Kriv and Gustav had a brief stare-down within this vicinity of destruction as a gigantic spacecraft got blasted down from above. The spacecraft descended towards them, but before it could completely crash, both figures moved. Swayub Gustav's figure turned blurry as he charged at Captain Kriv, who also charged vigorously at him as well. Gustav arched his right arm backwards, while clenching his fist strongly as he arrived before the massive and muscular pointy rock-like being. It was like an ant charging at a grasshopper as both figures arrived before each other, while the spacecraft descending was only a couple of feet away from crashing onto them. Gustav swung his clenched fist at Captain Kriv, who also threw his fist downwards at Gustav's minuscule-looking figure. Boom! Both fists collided in the next instant, causing a powerful surge of energy to rip across the vicinity. Bang! The force generated from the collision blasted into the spacecraft descending from above, causing it to shoot in another direction forcefully while parts of it dislodged from one another. Bang! 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 Other scraped items and structures in the vicinity were hit, as well as the shockwaves spread across the entire stage while the ground caved and the barrier surrounding the battle stage flickered intensely. From the first clash alone, spectators had their jaws dropping from the physical strength these two displayed. Both figures had slid back upon collision, but immediately charged at each other once more without a moment of rest. Bang! 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 Boom! 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 Ripples repeatedly blasted across the vicinity as Gustav and Captain Kriv clashed an uncountable number of times. Despite Captain Kriv's size, his speed was not lacking as he traded furious blows with Gustav that had turned blurry to the audience. Reinforce the barrier surrounding their stage. Handler 1 instructed one of the handlers around him, but it already has 5 layers of reinforcement. The handler reminded, just do it, make it 10. Just as Handler 1 said this, the first layer of the barrier blasted to pieces. The second layer, which was more powerful, instantly kicked in, protecting the surroundings and other parts of the arena from the impact of these two battles. On the stage, Gustav was constantly pushed back as they traded blows. There was no doubt that Captain Kriv was stronger physically. Each punch to Gustav felt like he was taking on the force of multiple fast-moving moons. Are you insulting me, Earthling? I told you not to hold back, Yaha. Captain Kriv voiced as he tightened his massive fist furiously and threw a punch forward that was 3 times more powerful than the previous ones. Fwyish, dash has been activated. Gustav's figure suddenly blurred as he appeared behind Captain Kriv the moment he swung his fist forward. Like I said, as you wish, Gustav's voiced as he threw a fist forward from behind with intensity. Captain Kriv only realized he had missed at the last moment, but his defense kicked in subconsciously as his pointy rocky back made rattling sounds as they twisted and connected to each other. His back instantly turned smooth and protruded the moment Gustav's fist collided with it. Bang! Another shockwave spread across the place as the gigantic Captain Kriv got blasted forward with intensity, causing his body to ricochet across the place. Bang! 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 His body slammed onto the ground and then ascended, crashing into a spacecraft above. He blasted through it and reappeared on the other end, before making a flip and descending towards the ground while his body kept flying backwards. Fwyish, Gustav's figure tore across the air and reappeared before him with another fist shooting forward at his face. I said use all you have. Captain Kriv yelled as he reached out both arms the moment Gustav arrived before him, while he was still in mid-air. Gustav noticed he had fallen into a trap, albeit too late, as his fist collided with Captain Kriv's face, causing another loud blast as his head tilted to the side while pieces of rocks fell off. Bam! Captain Kriv's arms wrapped around him at the same moment Gustav's fist made contact. Yuru! Captain Kriv's loud voice caused the surroundings to quake as he turned upside down while Gustav's body was in his grasp. Bang! He immediately slammed Gustav onto the ground upon descent. Boom! Another shockwave rang out again as destruction spread across the vicinity. Bang! 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 Multiple spacecraft descended from the air as the shockwaves slammed into them heavily. Krrrychhhhh. Cracks instantly appeared across the second layer of barrier, causing a look of worry to appear on the faces of the handlers. Gustav looked up and could see Captain Kriv launching another punch at his face after slamming him heavily onto the ground. He couldn't deny that he didn't expect Captain Kriv to tank his punch like that and take the damage only to deal him a greater damage. He had only realized what he was up to late. Captain Kriv suddenly paused his giant fist halfway as he leapt backwards. Meanwhile, Gustav slapped his hands on the ground with force in that same moment. Flyei, his body shot across the air backwards with immense speed as a destructive red beam slammed onto the area where his body laid initially. Boom! The already disgraded ground caved in as cracks spread across the area and debris blasted across the air. Gustav and Captain Kriv had narrowly evaded the red beams that shot down from above at random moments. Since the beams usually switch locations, it could appear anyway. Fortunately, they noticed it in time and swiftly escaped. You want me to use more than just my physical strength, right? All right. Gustav voiced as his figure began morphing. Beast transformation bloodline has been activated. Gustav's skin turned brownish red as tusks grew out of his thighs and forearms while his entirely body bloated. His body began brimming with so much energy that Captain Kriv's face turned a little wary as he watched Gustav reach a height of 10 feet. The Klaxosape's captain was around 15 feet tall, so their current height difference did not look as ridiculous as it did before. Gustav's eyes gleamed with a red glow as his muscular outline was very visible through his tight white and blue battlesuit. Atomic Blade has been activated. The moment the 8-feet-long milky-colored blade appeared in his grasp, he charged forward with intensity. Tuhush, Captain Kriv was taken by surprise as Gustav's figure blurred, and he reappeared right before him with a large milky blade sweeping towards his chest. Captain Kriv quickly reacted by swinging his fist at Gustav's face. Slash. Bang. Gustav's figure swept across the air as Captain Kriv's fist collided with his face a moment after his atomic blade slashed Kriv's chest. Captain Kriv groaned in pain as a large rip appeared across his chest area while his figure shot across the air from the force of collision. KRYCHH. Pieces of rock fell from his body as he swept across the ground for hundreds of feet after slamming onto it. This time Gustav had been the one to tank his attack while dealing more damage than before with Atomic Blade. Gustav ignored his bleeding face as he leapt forward while raising his Atomic Blade. Three, the Atomic Blade lengthened rapidly, reaching over 50 feet in just a moment as Gustav swung the massive blade down in mid-air with intensity. Captain Kriv quickly swerved to the side despite the massive space that had been left in his chest due to Gustav's initial attack. Slash. 3. Gustav's atomic blade caused a quarter of the stage to split as it tore through it upon collision. The cracks spread further with Captain Kriv barely evading and nearly falling into the large divide that was created from Gustav's attack. Hover has been activated. Gustav caused the blade to retract as he levitated, stopping himself from falling into the pit he created. Captain Kriv could see that Gustav had gotten a boost in power as he came charging at him without wasting a single second once more. Swish slish. Gustav swung the atomic blade at Captain Kriv multiple times with immense speed. His arms turned into blurs as Captain Kriv did his best to evade the blade that erased atoms upon collision. Swive, however. No matter how much Captain Kriv tried, Gustav was undoubtedly faster and would leave even more cuts across his body, sending him flying repeatedly upon collision. At the Klaxosape spectators area, the party of massive rocky creatures bore tense looks as they watched the battle unfold. You Kriv cannot defeat that Earthling without using it. The Earthling is powerful no doubt, but once Kriv uses it, he will defeat the Earthling. Why hasn't he used it? They watched as Captain Kriv continuously did his best to evade Gustav's barrages of attacks while tanking some and losing body parts each time. Gustav dashed forward once more as Captain Kriv tried taking swift backward steps. Follow current novels on Top Novel Fool. Com. Chapter 1262. Gustav dashed forward once more as Captain Kriv tries taking steps backwards. He slashed with even more intensity than before since he was aware at this point that Captain Kriv's rocky body was extremely difficult to inflict high damage on despite making use of atomic disintegration. Captain Kriv raised both his arms as he noticed he couldn't completely evade the blade. 3 the atomic blade cleaved through both Captain Kriv forearms, slicing them off cleanly. Gaspia! The entire arena descended into noise as ash-colored mist erupted from Captain Kriv's arms after they had been sliced off, covering the entire vicinity. Bam! Bam! The sound of the massive hands falling to the ground reverberated across the vicinity. However, the visibility of the stage became immensely hindered in the next moment. Roelfapide Yalfes nu Omicron Vepsilon. Siomicron M dash I think Captain Crimson has won. Dash I can't see anything right now. Dash oh mine the battle hasn't ended. As voices of disbelief spread across the vicinity, a crumbling sound rang out from the battle stage area. Raya Ara. A loud roar that caused the entire arena to tremble despite the barrier covering the stage rang out powerfully. The spectators who were initially jabbering away stared at the misty battle stage with expressions of intrigue. The more powerful spectators could already get a hang of what was ongoing on the battle stage and had expressions of surprise. Boom! A loud crash reverberated across the vicinity again, causing vast tremors all across the arena. Dash, he got Earth's captain? Dash, what in the world? The mist in the vicinity cleared up, and everyone stared at the battle stage with looks of disbelief. Moments earlier, Gustav, who was within the misty-covered environment, felt a great deal of pressure expanding from up ahead, immediately after his last successful attack. Despite the lack of clarity in the environment, he was well aware of when Captain Kriv leapt thousands of feet backwards after getting his arms sliced off. Captain Kriv made use of the mist which had been emitted from his sliced arms to switch locations. This would have worked better on anyone else, but Gustav's perception and the power of God eyes made it so that hindering his visuals was almost impossible. Gustav had charged forward even after Captain Kriv tried to keep a huge amount of distance in between them, but the instant after he moved, the crumbling sounds began ringing out. Spectators thought the ground had crumbled again from the impacts of their fight, but Gustav was right on the stage, so he knew it was far from the ground crumbling. Captain Kriv's body happened to be what was making this sound. The pointy rocks on his body all twisted and joined to each other like bolts and construction parts merging to each other. His rocky body changed from ash to dark red as a dangerous glimmer appeared in his sockets while his body enlarged rapidly. The core transformation. Gustav immediately recognized what was happening before him and paused his body in mid-air. Each core transformation from a Klaxosape comes with perks. Be careful, the system warned, but Gustav was already aware of this. However, it was too late to be wary as Gustav's senses were assaulted with the feeling of danger spreading forth from Captain Kriv's figure that had increased to 50 feet in size. Gustav didn't want to charge forward recklessly without properly figuring out the pros attached to Captain Kriv's transformation, which was why he paused movement. However, Captain Kriv had this point set his sights on him and roared while charging forward. Raya Ara. Captain Kriv's roar caused the entire arena to tremble tremendously as sound waves traveled across the air. Gustav squinted with a slightly disturbed look as he tried to counter the incoming fist with one of his since he found himself unable to dodge. Captain Kriv's fist was approaching with so much power, it would make evading futile. Through Aru, the grounds were splitting apart and ripples were spreading across the environment as the fist traveled forward despite the fact that it hadn't made contact with its target. I have to throw in the strongest punch I can currently conjure up. Gustav decided that coming up an equivalent amount of force would at least cause both attacks to cancel out. However, Gustav would soon realize that this was a grave error as he hurled his fist forward while his arm morphed. I think you should take a look at Snovel. Kmai's right arm turned more muscular as the tusks protruding out of them increased in length. His skin changed color from brownish red to silver as scales covered them. A creamy glow coated his entire arm as his fist tore through the air, radiating with explosive strength as well. The strength that this fist carried was not Gustav's highest, but it was higher than what he used with Captain Strum and happened to be the most powerful he could come up with under such short notice. It hadn't even been a second, yet both fists were already about 10 feet away from colliding. The wave of destructiveness ripping across the vicinity before the collision had created a crater that was hundreds of feet deep and still enlarging. Both their bodies trembled as they were exposed to the destructive power of each other's fists. It was at this moment that Gustav realized something. Shit. He cursed internally, but it was too late. Bom. The instant the collision occurred, a powerful and unfathomable blast rang out. The wistish ripples of destruction that spread forth wreaked havoc across the entire stage, causing the spacecraft in mid-air and the multiple scraped ones scattered around to get blasted across the air. They were all swept to the edges of the battle stage as the barrier surrounding them took a great hit. Bang, 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 bang. The second layer of barrier was instantly shattered, but that wasn't the end. The moment the third layer appeared in place, it was shattered as well. Fourth, shattered. Fifth, shattered. The barrier finally managed to hold at the sixth layer since every new layer was more powerful than the other. However, this didn't stop a great tremor from spreading to the entire arena. Everyone stared at the battle stage with awe-stricken faces as their seats quaked and tensely cracks appeared on multiple areas, but they quickly mended back. Fortunately, no one was harmed since the sixth layer of barrier held. If this battle had happened anywhere else, it would have caused unprecedented damage. The stage made the destructiveness seem minuscule due to how it was designed to trap in and absorb such powerful outbursts. Captain Kriv and Gustav would have destroyed a small planet by now had this not been the case. As the debris scattered across the stage slowly cleared, everyone's eyes widened. Dash, he got Earth's captain? Dash, what in the world are Klaxosapes made of? Dash, no way. On the other end of the barrier, a bloody human figures could be seen mashed against it. The figure, which was undoubtedly Gustav, slowly slid down as multiple spacecraft could be seen with scattered around him. Regeneration has been activated. Blood oozed out of Gustav's mangled face as his arms and legs, which were twisted in a different direction, slowly began to move back into place. That was worse than I expected. Gustav's vision, which was currently hindered by his blood-soaked face, began picking up on the situation of the environment. Captain Kriv, who was thousands of feet away from his position, only took a paltry sum of damage as compared to Gustav. Gustav realized at the last moment that Captain Kriv's fist was increasing in explosiveness and power the further it traveled. To make things worse, as Gustav threw his fist forward earlier, it was weakening in strength. What he figured out in those few milliseconds happened to be that the energy gathered around Captain Kriv's fist was not just accumulating but also stealing power from his. By the time both fists collided, his fist had weakened, meanwhile that of Captain Kriv's had increased exponentially. Before Gustav right now was a massive crater that had spread across the entire stage and was thousands of feet deep. Only the edges of the stage had high ground, which was where Gustav's battered body currently laid. If one was to move forward, they'd fall into the pit up ahead that was thousands of feet deep. Unfortunately for Gustav, this didn't stop Captain Kriv, who was initially on the other end. Thurum! He leapt forward in the next instant towards Gustav. Gustav groaned in pain as coughed out blood. Knowing that his regeneration wasn't complete yet, he quickly activated an ability while trying to move his dislocated arms. Energy discharge has been activated. A reddish wave of energy suddenly blasted forth from his figure as Captain Kriv closed in with another powerful punch. Boom! Bang! Captain Kriv blasted a massive hole through the energy discharge Gustav had activated and surprisingly landed before him in the next instant. This was really the first time Gustav was witnessing anyone blast through his energy discharge with just physical strength alone. Chapter 1263. This was really the first time Gustav was witnessing anyone blast through his energy discharge with just physical strength alone. He had to admit that Captain Kriv was incredibly overpowered after activating his core transformation. Captain Kriv immediately threw a fist at Gustav's body so as to end this battle before Gustav could recuperate completely. Lightning Blitz has been activated. Gustav instantly turned into a streak of lightning and reappeared on the other end of the barrier. Bang! Captain Kriv's fist slammed into the barrier on the other end, causing it to tremble and flicker as a small tremor was generated once more. Captain Kriv realized that Gustav had appeared on the other end and reached out to grab a scrapped spacecraft by the side. FYI, he immediately hurled the 700 feet large spacecraft across the battle stage like it weighed nothing. Gustav had barely managed a single second of breathing space when he spotted the massive spacecraft shooting at him with intense speed. His body turned slightly greenish as icicle-like spikes shot out of the ground, forming a barrier around his battered body. The Iroh silk formed a triangular-shaped barrier which stabbed into the spacecraft in mid-air, causing it to get hooked as its descent immediately came to a stop. Gustav watched his body slowly regenerate as Captain Kriv leapt across the air again. Bam! His 50-feet frame landed before the covering of Iroh silk, which happened to still be extending all around Gustav, making it difficult to see through. Bang! Captain Kriv threw a fist at the Iroh silk covering, blasting through layers of it as chunks of the icicle-like covering scattered across the place. Gustav's body remained green and slightly bloated as he kept generating Iroh silk non-stop to make up for the parts that were blasted through. Bang! 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 It was like the Iroh silk had turned to pieces of wood as Captain Kriv's fist kept penetrating them quite easily. The Iroh silk would usually be able to hold back barrages of attacks without getting damaged, but in the face of Captain Kriv's fist, it was like paper. Captain Kriv's fist kept shattering the Iroh silk faster than Gustav could generate them, but fortunately, Gustav had nearly regenerated completely by the time he shattered enough to arrive before him. Lightning Blitz has been activated. Gustav's body turned into a streak of lightning once more, reappearing on the west side of the barrier. Bang! Captain Kriv's fist disgraded the vicinity again after missing Gustav. HNNGHH. He turned and noticed Gustav thousands of feet away. I need to figure out if that happens only with physical attack or with any energy-based attack. Gustav thought back to how Captain Kriv had stolen energy from his fist in the last clash. Gustav had used only physical strength when throwing out that fist earlier, but it had been from part ultimate combination which he made to affect his right arm alone. He wanted to confirm if Captain Kriv was capable of absorbing other energy-based attacks or just physical attacks alone. Gustav knew that if it was the former, then the situation was very bad, but he couldn't engage Captain Kriv without proper confirmation first. Speed. Gustav still knew he had the advantage in this aspect despite Captain Kriv's core transformation, which also boosted Kriv's speed. God Eyes has been activated. Gustav's eyes widened slightly in shock the moment he stared at Captain Kriv energy levels. Captain Kriv was no doubt the highest in physical prowess amongst all other captains, and God Eyes confirmed this theory to Gustav. However, now wasn't the time to be smitten by his energy levels. It was time to make the other confirmation. Thumb, Captain Kriv leapt forward while swinging another fist at Gustav's figure. Just like every other powerful punch before, the air was already sending ripples across the battle stage while the fist was still tens of feet away from making contact. Atomic disintegration has been activated. Gustav's palms emitted a burst of milky glow as he thrust one of them forward intensely. Palm thrust has been activated. A powerful wave of energy spread from his being as his palm tore through the air as well, headed straight for the incoming fist. You finally stopped running. Captain Kriv grinned as he increased the intensity of his fist while descending from the air vibrantly. Gustav felt the strike of his palm weakening as Captain Kriv closed his and scrunched his face a little, just when collision was about to occur. Lightning Blitz has been activated. Thrashas, Gustav's figure turned into a streak of lightning and reappeared on the east of the battle stage instantly. Boom! A loud crash rang out once more as the entire stage trembled immensely while debris scattered in every direction. Again? Captain Kriv was starting to get frustrated as he gritted his teeth and turned to find the location Gustav had reappeared this time. Only the energy from physical thrust was absorbed. The energy from atomic disintegration was unaffected. As Gustav came to this realization, he deactivated God Eyes. He knew what he needed to do now, but the only problem was how to go about it. Even being in a 200-feet radius with Captain Kriv was disastrous, so engaging him using only energy-based attacks would be immensely difficult. Time to go full throttle, Gustav thought as Captain Kriv charged at him once more while roaring. Ultimate combination has been activated. Gustav's figure transformed rapidly as silver scales grew out of his skin and he increased in height. Dark horns grew out of his forehead, reaching a length of 3 feet as they twisted upwards. His entire figure was cascaded in an unfathomable silver glow, as his muscle looked like it was about to rip through his blood-soaked outfit. A long black tail could be seen from his rear, and a crimson glow appeared in his eyes. It looked like the space around Gustav was twisting as he stared at the approaching opponent with a deep gaze. Lowering his head a little, a violet-colored energy began circulating in between his horns. Streams of dangerous aura spread forth from Gustav's position, causing Captain Kriv to turn a little wary, but at this moment, he was less than 50 feet away from Gustav, so it was impossible to stop his attack. However, even with the danger he felt, he knew his fist was increasing in power as it further approached Gustav, so he wasn't too wary. At most, they'd both take damage from this attack. Just when Gustav's attack was about to blast forward, Lightning Blitz has been activated. Thraz has, his entire figure suddenly vanished. Captain Kriv's eyes widened as his fist collided with the barrier ahead, once more causing a loud crash to ring out. The sense of danger that vanished along with Gustav's presence suddenly reappeared above him in the next moment. Captain Kriv didn't even get the chance to react as a bright violet glow encapsulated the entire vicinity from above. Tinzish. A powerful and destructive violet beam shot downwards with intensity, instantly slamming into him from above. Boom. The surroundings immediately caved as Captain Kriv's entire figure crashed onto the ground, as the powerful beam caused his Bodu to burrow into it mercilessly from its intensity. This beam kept shooting downwards for a couple of seconds before it finally dimmed. By the time it thinned out, Captain Kriv's figure had been buried hundreds of feet into the ground while steam erupted. Gustav's figure was high above, hovering close to the barrier since that was the current limit of Lightning Blitz. The best way to go about this battle is to keep taking him by surprise. No direct contact, Gustav said internally as he activated God Eyes once more. Captain Kriv's back had been charred and rocks fell of his body as he tried to get up after the attack. Gustav descended at this point. Fwyi bam. The moment he landed in the crater, which was thousands of feet deep, he activated another ability. Gravitational manipulation has been activated. Captain Kriv, who was about to charge forward at Gustav, once again suddenly felt an insurmountable force permeate the environment. Furuum, before he could realize what was happening, his body ascended uncontrollably into the air along with pieces of rocks and dirt around him. He hadn't managed to stabilize himself when Gustav opened his mouth. Kyr! Massive rings of sonic waves shot forth from Gustav's mouth, blasting into Captain Kriv's figure vigorously. Grrhhhh. Captain Kriv groaned as his earring and entire body trembled slightly while his figure shot further across the air. Bang! He slammed into the other end of the barrier while the sonic waves thinned out in the next moment. That didn't do much damage, Gustav noticed as he stared at Captain Kriv with God Eyes. You have to use something more powerful. You're only aggravating him at this point. His physical energy is increasing by the second. The longer this battle prolongs, the stronger he will get. Gustav also came to this realization using God Eyes. Chapter 1264. His physical energy is increasing by the second. The more this battle prolongs, the stronger he will get. Gustav also came to this realization using God Eyes. Zing, a 5-feet-long katana appeared in Gustav's grasp in the next instant, which instantly automatically unsheathed. Electric arcs could be seen swimming across the red blade, as it emitted a certain pressure the moment Gustav touched the hilt. This was the Jiko Hakai katana, and Gustav had decided to make use of it since he wanted to maintain a no-direct contact battle. Gustav gathered energy as he raised the Jiko Hakai katana in a vertical format. The katana's red blade glowed brightly as the electric arcs swimming around it increased in length and intensity. Captain Kriv, who was trying to get up from up ahead, sensed another feeling of danger as he stared forward. Thawing. The entire stage had been lit up in bright red as Gustav placed his second hand on the hilt of the katana before swinging it downwards with great might. Captain Kriv ignored the pain he was feeling and quickly jumped to his feet. Fwyi, he sped sideways, with the intention of dodging the immensely long arc of reddish energy sweeping forward at the moment. When Captain Kriv realized he couldn't dodge, he separated his arms like he was going in for a hug, while tightening his rocky muscles. Sweeping both hands forward, Captain Kriv clapped his hands together with great force. Boom! It sounded like a nuclear weapon had gone off as a burst of wave from the impact shot forward with intensity. Boom! The moment Gustav's attack and Captain Kriv's clap effect collided, a greater blast rang out as the two powers contended against each other, sending powerful waves across the place. Roelfa Pidi Elfes Nu Omicron V Epsilon L, Mai's body flailed in the air for a bit as he held the hilt of the katana while pushing a palm forward. All of a sudden, the gravitational force around him underwent a reversal, causing the waves blasting in his direction to shift upwards. He stabilized his figure as his hair blew in the wind while the red arc, battling for supremacy up ahead, finally slashed through Captain Kriv's attack. Bang! Fortunately for Captain Kriv, the massive red arc had reduced in power, so when it hit, the damage was not as great as it would have been. However, despite that, Captain Kriv had taken more damage than he had inflicted on Gustav in the last few minutes. His reddish rocky covering after activating core transformation was usually powerful enough to tank attacks of high caliber without taking any or much damage, but in Gustav's case these damages were beyond the threshold. Captain Kriv's face emitted an expression of horror as Gustav swung the katana forward once more before he even had the chance to recuperate. Swayawai! Swayawaya! Swihai! Swiwi! Captain Kriv quickly thrust his fist forward multiple times in reaction to the incoming slashes. His fists were like ballistic weaponry, sending powerful surges forward as he thrust out multiple times. Boom! 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 The blast the collisions created were like nothing that had been seen before, as Captain Kriv was finally managing to stand his ground by thrusting his fists more than 100 times forward in a single second. I need a chance. This made the explosiveness his combined attacks carried to be on par with the slashes from the Jiko Hakai katana. KRRYYCHHHH. Cracks began to appear on the 6th layer of the barrier surrounding them. Captain Kriv was still taking occasional damage from their continuous firing of attacks, but none of them stopped. Swayawai! Swayawaya! Swihai! Swiwi! Boom! 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 From the spectator's point of view, they could barely see anything besides blurry movement of limbs and flurries of powerful attack, each capable of leveling the face of a planet. Gustav kept repeatedly slashing forward with the Jiko Hakai katana, while Captain Kriv kept thrusting his fist forward to counter. Bang! The 6th layer soon got blasted to smithereens, but fortunately, the 7th layer quickly took its place. Despite the overpowered state of Captain Kriv, he was still getting pushed back and taking occasional damages as the back and forth attacks continuously played out. I only need an opportunity, an opening. Captain Kriv's face displayed a pressured look as he kept thrusting his fist forward repeatedly. Gustav had a grasp on the Jiko Hakai katana now, and due to his tremendous strength while ultimate combination was activated, he was barely taking any damage from using the powerful katana. Thang! A reddish bolt suddenly descended from the air in Gustav's position. Swiwi! He swiftly swerved towards the left as the reddish bolt slammed onto the ground in the position where he was initially situated. The split moment Gustav stopped his attack to evade the beam was the opportunity Captain Kriv has been waiting for, as his rocky thighs exploded with power and he charged forward. I think you should take a look at Snovel. Kumthum. The explosive speed at which he charged forward left Gustav dumbfounded, as it hadn't even been a second when he spotted a powerful fist of domination sweeping at his figure. Captain Kriv's acceleration was faster than Angie's base speed, so it would leave anyone dumbfounded, Gustav included. Lightning Blitz has been activated. Gustav activated Lightning Blitz for the 5th time, causing it to go into a 10 minutes cooldown. Thrazhaz, his figure reappeared a distance away within the crater. However, at this same moment, Captain Kriv turned around, gathering the waves generated from his fist and causing it to make a 360 degrees turn as well. The instant Gustav reappeared thousands of feet away, Captain Kriv roared as he shot his fist in Gustav's new direction. Thririh, the ground split open once more as the waves traveled forward, arriving before Gustav in nearly an instant. Chapter 1265 Acquisition Crimson. 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 They had been completely astonished by this battle. It was way more spectacular and destructive than any other battle they had seen so far. Phew. What would have happened if Handler 1 didn't ask for the reinforcement of the barrier? One of the handlers stared at the destruction with a slight look of relief. 6 layers of barriers had been destroyed. Usually, every stage had only 5, but Handler 1 had asked for this one to be reinforced with 5 extra layers after the battle began. Had this not been the case, one couldn't tell how the entire arena would have been affected. Gustav Crimson, Planet Earth, wins, 1,400 points attained. These two have to be the strongest captains for sure. Captain Kriv is the strongest physically even though he lost. How did Captain Crimson manage to win against that? Captain Crimson is a beast for sure. The spectators discussed about the battle as Gustav moved out of the stage while transforming back into his usual looks. The spectators wondered if any captain would have been able to survive such with Captain Kriv's overpowered state. They couldn't imagine anyone winning, even though they knew a couple of captains were assumed to be ranked on the same level of strength. At the last few minutes of the battle, Gustav had substituted himself with one of his energy siphoning spheres. Since he could conjure an empty energy sphere and make it invisible on command, he placed one quite a distance away and substituted with it when Captain Kriv was about to drive his fist into him. This substitution technically changed the whole scenario since the sphere absorbed the force from Captain Kriv's punch and then detonated at Gustav's command. Strum would have won. Gustav knew this for sure in his mind as he moved towards Earth's participant's position. Captain Strum ability was one that would have practically render Captain Kriv useless despite his strength. It would definitely be a bad matchup for Captain Kriv if they were ever to challenge each other. He knew Captain Kriv was physically the most powerful, but he also knew he subconsciously underestimated him due to everything he had in his arsenal. Gustav had decided he wouldn't use cosmic superiority under any circumstance before the entire world, but at the same time, because he knew he possessed such a power, he had an infallible mindset that had been brewing up within subconsciously. He knew he had to get rid of this mindset since it nearly caused him to lose today despite all he had in his arsenal. He analyzed how the entire battle played out in his mind again and realized he made so many errors. He pointed out areas where he could have applied his abilities better to achieve a much satisfactory result. Gustav took mental note so he wouldn't make the same mistake again in future battles, especially one he wanted badly. The crowd was still busy cheering for Gustav, but he wasn't even paying attention to any of that. Captain Kriv had lost, but at the very least, he proved that the Klaxosapes were still the strongest in physical prowess. He was in a pinch yet he didn't make use of it. At Indulus Prime Spectators area, Captain Irond watched the highlight of Gustav's battle with an intrigued expression. Captain Irond, what if he isn't the outworldly? A team member questioned from the side. Remember our Lord claims, the outworldly is amongst us here. He cannot be a part of a group that would have gotten disqualified, and so far our investigations point to 5 people who might be the outworldly. Amongst the 5, only he possesses a 90% probability of being the outworldly and the moment he activates it. The rest of the 10% will be complete, Captain Irond voiced with a serious tone as his eyes gleamed with deep darkness. But what about Captain Strum? Indrik Alsov of Earth. These two seem to be above the power threshold of young participants just like Captain Crimson is, another team member voiced. While these two are hiding power beyond the threshold, they still do not possess as many abilities as Captain Crimson does. Remember what the Lord said? Captain Irond voiced in response. The outworldly will possess a variety of abilities apart from the major ones that can control and rewrite fates, the team member voiced in recollection. But we cannot go ahead with the assignment till we are 100% sure that it is him, another team member stated. Sooner or later he will use the power. I assume he is trying to hide. He needs to be in a pinch first, Captain Irond said with a suspicious tone. How can we get him in a pinch? He has too many abilities that can assist him in getting out of almost every situation. One of them questioned with a tone of bafflement. Almost every situation, not every situation. I will have to come up with a situation where he will have no choice but to reveal it, Captain Irond said with a decisive tone. While the Indulus Prime participants were discussing in their little corner, the battles from this batch were already coming to an end. Gustav's teammates had all welcomed him back minutes earlier and showed their admiration. They never doubted headwin even when things looked intense. While they were still in a joyous mood after the win, Gustav didn't stop analyzing his battle with Captain Kriv and began coming up with methods to counter the power of an opponent he had intentions of challenging in the future. In Draconid's spectators area, the Drakons had set their sights on Gustav as well. Can Strum defeat that Earthling? Captain Crimson? One of the Drakons at the front row voiced with a tone of worry. Should that even be a question? Just because he is spectacular amongst many others doesn't mean he can defeat Strum. Bronze immediately responded with a slight scoff. Strum is the ultimate apex of his peers. I believe in his strength as well. Another well-respected Drakon with 5 arms stated from the side. The Earth Captain has a pickle with him, so their battle is inevitable. Another one of the Drakons voiced. As batches continuously played out, the spectators would occasionally bring up Gustav's battle with Captain Kriv. It still remained the most intense battle since the start of the challenge. Other captains had come out to battle since then, but none of them matched up with the tenacity of how that battle had played out. The Klaxosapes were still acknowledged as the physically strongest beings in the universe, but Gustav was considered a beast. Too many abilities in his arsenal. Angie Villandrobadia, Planet Earth, versus Fiddle Kivora, Planet Wildrek. Gustav watched as more of Earth participants got their turns to be challengers. The battles were interesting, no doubt, and Gustav made sure to still keep taking note. At the moment, Angie was battling with an opponent whose species were known as the fastest in the universe. Just as Captain Kriv was trying to prove that the Klaxosapes were physically the most powerful, Angie was trying to test her speed with this species. SHS wanted to know if she was truly qualified to accept the title of the fastest which her friends and teammates had bestowed upon her. Swoosh, swoosh. Currently, all that could be seen on the screens were silver and yellow streaks which had drawn lines all across the battle stage. These two were moving so fast that even when the screens above tried to slow the footage of their battle down, it still appeared a bit blurry. Dash, what is this? I can't even enjoy the battle. Dash, oh man, this sucks. Dash, could they slow it down a bit more? While some of the spectators complained, people like Gustav were unbothered. Although the two were considerably faster than he was, his perception and sight allowed him to view their battle without stress. It was one thing to move as fast, and it was a different thing to be able to see as fast. Although, seeing as fast doesn't mean a person would be quick enough to prevent an attack from someone moving faster. Bam, bam, bam. Occasionally clashes occurred between Angie and the yellow being whose lower half happened to be structured like a hornet. 2 stick-like legs were attached to her lower half, which the Wildreklin used in moving very quickly, making the world look still around her. Angie hadn't managed to land a strike that connected since the start of the battle, but she was still making use of her base speed, which ranged from 400 to 700,000 feet per second. They sped across the battle stage, racing along the barrier and even upwards. Bam, 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 bam. Angie threw a number of palms sideways as they made their way across the top of the barrier, running upside down like it was nothing. Her opponent met Angie thrusts with some of hers, causing them to collide more than 100,000 times in just a single second. Follow current novels on Top Novel Fool. Calm. The Rusians get more powerful with every successful strike. Gustav took note of this battle as well. But their strength decreased by a level if they don't manage to evade an attack. The system chimed in. Actually, it could reduce more than a level based on the amount of damage the attack causes. Gustav had God Eyes activated, so he could analyze properly. At this moment, on Angie's stage, a crazy phenomenon occurred. Wah! Everyone had their jaws dropping as Fildil, who was Angie's current opponent, happened to be moving in very slow motion. They stared at the yellow figure with hornet-shaped lower body and stick legs, moving in literally frames. She looked like a lagging game character as her right leg, which was currently above the ground, took seconds to descend. Good thing she didn't activate that other ability. I think her body can handle this one, Gustav said internally as he stared at Angie, whose left horn was emitting a silver glow. Swai bam. Angie sped forward and drove an uppercut into Fiddle's jaw. Fiddle's fish-like mouth was slowly opening as her reaction to the damage Angie had just inflicted on her happened to be slow. Her body was slowly sweeping off the ground as well. However, Angie wasn't done. Bam, 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 bam. Angie drove fists into her opponent's body repeatedly. Fiddle hadn't even gotten the chance to react to the first attack due to her current speed, yet 10 more had disoriented her entire being. Gustav noticed Angie was moving only a little faster than a regular person as she dealt these strikes and came to a realization. Her speed is reduced when she activates this ability, he noted. But if she activates that form where her horn increases, she could break that limiter, the system voiced. That might be true, but that MJGHD also sap all of her energy. I want to see how long she can last in this state, Gustav responded. Angie soon deactivated this ability, but at the time she did so, she had inflicted lots of damage on her opponent. It didn't take too long before she won the battle. Her abilities had left the spectators wowed. It felt like cheating to them, but she won regardless. Yonda on the other side had devastated his opponent and even finished his battle before Angie did. Afjener, who Gustav was also taking note of, won her battle, which left Gustav a little startled. Afjener hadn't lost any battle, which was why she was placed on a pedestal in the minds of a lot of spectators. They weren't surprised that she won, but Gustav knew for sure that she wasn't supposed to. Not only were Indulus Prime currently ranked 3rd overall, none of their participants also happened to be weak. Every single one of them besides their captain were on the same level of strength, and only Gustav seemed to have realized this. If Afjener could defeat any one of them, it meant that she could defeat all of them besides the captain, which was impossible since Gustav had watched the others win opponents that were more powerful. He purposely threw in the towel. They don't mind losing. Gustav came to this realization. And you know why they wouldn't mind losing? Because winning Aesop isn't their reason for participating. The moment this thought drifted into Gustav's mind, he realized he could no longer give them the benefit of the doubt. Indulus Prime is up to something. He was now 100% sure. The other batches went on while Gustav's mind remained the dwelling place of a million thoughts as the hours rolled by. What were they after? What is their aim and objective? Is there a reason to go to such lengths? Is the whole planet in whatever scheme they're plotting? Or is it just the participants that are up to something? The battle challenge ended for the day, and Evergon moved to their various accommodation quarters while Gustav excused himself once more. He had gone to his agreed meeting point with a friend. Why are you wearing a patch? Gustav questioned as he noticed an eye patch on Stark's left eye. It's just a little burn. It will heal up soon, Stark responded with a wry smile while rubbing his brow. Was it? You got injured from that? Gustav was instantly able to tell where the injury came from. Don't worry, it's just a minor burn, Stark dismissed while waving his hand. You should get that looked at, Gustav said with a tone of concern. I will for sure, just don't worry about it, Stark nodded. Gustav was troubled that Stark got injured because of his request. He turned to Stark as they paused their movement with an intrigued expression. It was more difficult than I expected, and I started to feel the corrosion of my eyes after forcibly trying to see what was happening in their room last night. Stark began to recount the tale of events. Did you manage to see anything? Gustav inquired. Yes, I did see something, Stark responded with a very troubled look. Follow current novels on Top Novel Fool. Calm. Chapter 1267. Yes, I did see something, Stark responded with a very troubled look. What is it? At this point, Gustav's curiosity had peaked. It's a bit difficult to explain. Stark paused briefly as he gathered his words. Gustav's facial expression was currently both focused and calm as he waited. Firstly, the interior looked nothing like being in this plane. It looked like a different dimension of its own. Stark began speaking. What do you mean by, it looked like a different dimension of its own? Gustav questioned. I really don't know how to describe it, but that definitely wasn't a room. It was somewhere else, Stark sucked in cold breath as he recalled just how the feeling of seeing that environment gave him shivers. The Indulus Prime members had gathered in a circle and dark mist was flowing from their bodies. The dark mist was sustaining a projection of sorts. The projection was an item, but my mind didn't register its features properly before I lost vision in my left eye, Stark explained while softly rubbing his brow. That is barely enough to come up with a proper analysis, but I really appreciate your help so far, Gustav replied with an expression of suspicion while slightly holding his chin. You're welcome. I wish I could have been of more help. Stark heaved a low sigh. You can, Gustav stated. How? Stark's eyes twinked. You said you couldn't properly explain what you saw, and even though your mind didn't register it fast enough, it's definitely still in your memory since you viewed it. Where are you going with this? I have an ability that lets me explore and witness memories like they're mine. If I use it on you, I will be able to see what you saw. The moment Gustav suggested this, visible panic appeared on Stark's face for a brief instant before it was quickly followed by a chuckle. Haha, I don't think that would be a good idea. I would have allowed, but I have quite some embarrassing memories from the last 24 hours. Stark rubbed his dreadlocks as he spoke. I will only target your memory of the night before, Gustav stated with a reassuring tone. I can't let you do that. Breaching my mind or memories too much of a personal thing for me to let you do. Stark shook his head. I need this to help my friend. I don't know what those folks are planning, but it definitely isn't anything good. Gustav tried to convince him. I'm sorry, but I refuse. I would help with anything else, but not this, Stark voiced with a dismissive tone. At this moment, Gustav considered taking an involuntary action, but quickly turned down that notion in his mind. All right then. I understand. You've done plenty already. Gustav stopped pushing it at this point. Thank you for understanding. I really wished I could have helped more, Stark said with a tone of regret. No, thank you, Gustav emphasized with a tone of appreciation. So what are you going to do now? Stark inquired. I have to find a way to figure out exactly what they're doing in there. I am more sure that winning Aesop was never their goal, and their reason for being here must have to do with whatever you saw that was being projected within that space, Gustav voiced lengthily before turning around. I have to go now, Gustav added before turning around. Wouldn't it be best to inform the organizers and those high rankers in the Alliance? Stark questioned before Gustav could leave. I can't do that without enough information and evidence to back my claims. I don't even know enough to be aware of what to accuse them with, so it wouldn't be a good idea, Gustav replied before dashing off. Swoosh by. His voice trailed off with the sound of the whooshing wind. After Gustav left, Stark heaved a sigh of relief. That was close, he muttered. Two figures appeared beside him in the next instant. I told you it was a bad idea to be acquainted with him, family head, Viltru reiterated. It's fine. He doesn't suspect anything, Stark responded. He's hiding something, Gustav muttered as he arrived in Earth's accommodation area. Or he just doesn't want you in his head. I think Earthlings are pretty sensitive with their memories, the system voiced. No, this isn't the usual bashfulness that comes from trying to hide the embarrassing moments you wouldn't want anyone else to witness in your head, Gustav muttered with a glint at the corner of his eyes. I even offered to pick the specific time last night, and he still refused. He is hiding something beyond that. There's something he doesn't want me to see, Gustav added. And Svel, nah, this is definitely something unrelated. Stark's personality would prevent him from doing something derogatory, but at the same time, whatever he is hiding is not so virtuous as well, which is why he doesn't want me to figure it out, Gustav analyzed with a slight tone of curiosity. But let it slide for now. I have bigger fish to fry. You're able to read people better now. Not bad, the system praised. And you're not too bad, Gustav ridiculed. I am not a creature of emotions. I think you should take a look at its novel. Siamacronym, whatever you say, robot, Gustav shrugged. Ouch, Gustav winced. I still live in you, the system reminded. Looks like I hit a nerve. Oh wait, you don't have emotions, right? Keep yapping. They'll let you go into cardiac arrest next, the system threatened. Gustav had more words to hit her with, but decided to keep quiet as he tried to bury a chuckle. 2-week quest has been issued, Gustav stared at the corner of his eyes as he noticed the notification. You're so petty, Gustav shook his head. It's automatic. The system girly voice had a hint of helplessness. Gustav decided to check the details of the quest to confirm his thoughts of what it might entail.